I will go ahead and read our emergency statement as has become customary. As chair of the Pembroke School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I'm confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We're utilizing Cisco WebEx for this electronic meeting. All the members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone number: 1-408-418-9388. And passwords, the password is FBCRQUTP362, or by clicking on the following web address, sau53.org, and click the banner for remote school board meetings. We've also provided public notice of the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing this meeting, including how to access it through WebEx or telephone. Instructions have also been provided on the website of sau53.org as previously mentioned. We're also providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are any problems with access. If anybody in the community has problems accessing this meeting, please email Sandy Valine, that's SVALINE, at sau53.org. In the event that the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. We'll start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Jean.
Present and alone.
Anne.
Present and alone.
April.
Present and alone.
Amy.
Hi, everybody. Present and alone.
And this is Andy, and I am also present and also alone. Thank you very much. So agenda item number 2 is minutes of previous meetings. We haven't had minutes on here in a little while because there's been so much going on. I intend to have these on more regularly. I think to avoid prolonging this, I'd like to see if we can get an idea if people are prepared to vote on these. If we're not prepared to vote on them, I would move that or ask that we could push them to next meeting, and if anybody has edits that they need to make, please send them to Sandy. So does anybody want to make a motion on one or all of these?
I'll make them. This is Amy. I'm ready to review them. I didn't know if you kind of wanted to go around the room on that, Andy, but I think it would probably be best to make a one-by-one motion. So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of July 21st.
This is April. I'll second that motion.
Great. Is there a discussion on July 21st? Awesome. Then on a roll call vote to approve the minutes from the July 21st meeting, Anne?
Yes.
April?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
And I'm yes. Thank you all.
Andy, this is Amy. I'll make a motion to approve the July 28th minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second. It's Ann.
Thank you. Discussion on the July 28th meeting minutes.
Andy, this is April. I would like to propose that we approve them based on a correction on page 14. Near the bottom of the page, it says that Mrs. Villani, as board members, we need to remember our function. We represent the community, not the educational experts. That is actually a misquote. What I did say is we represent the community. We are not educational experts, and I would like to ask that that be corrected. Thank you.
Okay. Amy, are you okay with your motion being to approve with the suggested amendment from April?
Yes.
Thank you, Amy.
Please second that.
Yes, I will second that.
Awesome. Any other discussion? Great. Then on a roll call vote, April?
Yes, with the correction.
Anne?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you.
Andy, this is Amy. I'll make a motion to approve the August 4th meeting minutes.
This is Ann. Alex second.
Thank you. Discussion around the August 4th minutes. All right, hearing none, then a motion to accept the August 4th meeting minutes on a roll call vote. Jean? Sorry, Jean, I missed it. You were too quick.
Yes.
Thank you. Ann?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
April?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you very much.
I'll make a motion to approve the August 6th meeting minutes.
This is Ann. I second.
All right, thank you. Discussion on the August 6 minutes.
Andy, this is April. I would like to ask that we approve with the correction. I'm going to ask for two different corrections. The first one is on page 16. It says that Ms. Villani, NHDOE, is offering Canvas as a platform. I did not mention Canvas in that meeting. What I spoke of is the DOE has a remote instruction website, and it includes a sample student release form. So I'm
Okay.
going to ask for that correction. The second correction I'm going to ask for is on page 17, near the bottom of the page. It's about the motion. It says a motion to follow the health and safety guidelines established by the governing bodies in managing the property and buildings was made by Ms. Villani, seconded by Ms. Vaughn. I did not make that motion. I do believe that motion was made by Ms. Manzelli.
I think the second one is correct. I don't have any recollection of the first change, and so I am fine with amending my motion to approve these minutes with the two corrections April just noted. Good catches.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ann, are you still okay with your second?
Ann will second.
Awesome, thank you. Other discussion? Fantastic. Then August 6 minutes on a roll call vote. Ann?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
April?
Yes, with corrections.
And Andy's a yes. April, if you could get the language changes to Sandy, that would be fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. So moving on to agenda item 3A, public comments. We will do 15 minutes. We will follow the general rules of the board, which are 3-minute time limit. Patty, if you don't mind trying to keep track of that for me, that would be awesome. I'll ask people to try to be as brief as possible. There's a couple of agenda items tonight that may make a lot of people want to speak tonight. I do want to stick as close to that 15-minute time frame as possible. We're always a little flexible with the online meetings because with the hand raises and the phone folks, it's a little sketchy. So I just ask if you're going to speak, try to be succinct. And with that, I will open it up. I think Mr. Motika is hosting for us tonight. If you want to go ahead and start with hands. For those of you that haven't joined us before, if you want to contribute to the public comment section, if you are on a computer, there's a hand raise button. It's in a little bit different spot for different people. For me, if I open my participant list, then my name is at the top and there's a hand raise button just to the right of my name. Mobile apps, it's a little bit different. You just kind of have to look around. So if you'd like to contribute, raise your hand, and time allowing, Mr. Motika will recognize you. And then at the end, I will have him open up blocks of phone numbers, unmute you, and ask that if you're on the phone, you give your name and we can recognize you that way. So if everybody, I can ask for patience. Sometimes this is a little bit touch and go, but Chris, if you're ready for hands, we can get started.
I'm ready. Let's start with Don Fisher. You have the floor.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, I'm just speaking tonight on behalf of the sports programs. My son Cooper is an incoming sophomore to Pembroke Academy. He's played on the PAC hockey team, Pembroke Academy Campbell. I think it's really important that you really think about what you're going to do for sports this year. These kids need this. I know my son definitely needs this. I can only speak to the hockey team right now because that's where our son's involved. But he's been playing on the Pembroke Academy Campbell Hockey Summer League this whole summer, and they've been following all the protocols given. They've been asked to arrive and leave with masks on. They have to have their temperatures taken as they enter the building. We have had absolutely zero problems. These kids just want to play, and they will do anything you ask them to do in order to make that happen. A lot of these kids are driven by sports. They work really hard in school in order to keep their grades up in order to be able to play. And I think it would be a real disappointment to end all sports this year. And I really think you need to reconsider going into this school year about how you're going to handle this. You need to let them play. That's all.
Thanks, Don.
Andy, can I
Thank you.
mention that I think we lost Jean? A pop-up just showed Jean left the meeting. I think we lost them.
Yep, I don't see him in the excuse me, the participant list anymore. So maybe we'll give him a minute or two before we call on the next one, Chris. Otherwise, we will push forward.
Thank you.
Thanks for noticing.
Andy, this is Ann. I sent him a text, but I haven't heard back yet.
Me too. Thanks, Ann.
Gene just replied that he's unable to call in either, so I asked what he would advise, and I'm just waiting to hear back.
You, Patty.
He is trying to reboot, and he said to proceed, and he'll be back soon.
Great. Sandy, have you heard? You haven't heard of any other reports of trouble? Okay. Okay, then we will push forward. So Chris, whoever's next on the list.
Andy, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Amy, and I hate
Sure.
to be so picky. I'm not sure that it's lawful for us to proceed, even if the board member says to proceed, if we know the board member does not currently have the ability to get in.
So I did a little bit of research on this a little while back, and if it's if the reason for not being able to connect is a personal thing, like say somebody's Ethernet card on their computer broke, that doesn't necessitate us postponing or canceling the meeting. If if it's a power outage, if it's something beyond the control of the community, then that's a whole different thing.
Okay, that's fine.
So
and I can also see an interpretation where this is no different than like, I had a conflict and I couldn't come to the meeting today.
Yeah, and we do have a quorum, so
yeah. Okay, thank you.
And actually, he just texted me too and said that have no phone service or internet currently. So I'll check in again with him after public comment too, just to make sure that he's still working on it. Thank you. Chris?
All right, next on the floor is Carrie Dean.
Come on, come. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Tonight, so I will be brief. Sports and clubs are a big topic tonight. People have been questioning how we cannot open. First decision to go was not made by the parents, and I'm willing to guarantee those who want their move forward. Also, the ones who are ready for our kids to be back in school, and those who are against sports. And club business. Participants are in school with non-participants. Most sports are held outside, and most clubs are small groups. Their team. They're hanging with friends and family in large groups with incident. Transportation was also a question. I'm willing to guarantee that if parents were schools, that would be willing to get their kids to and from practices and from their those who need sports to help them with college admission. And during this time of financial hardship for many, a student athlete. Last, I request that those that do not have children attending Pembroke School participating or clubs, please leave this issue discussion to the parents and students. I know the administrators, teachers, staff, etc., are all working very hard to figure out how August. That I hope families see something from the school. This is a anxious time for many normal circumstances. New what their days and weeks are going to look like, so we all can plan.
Thanks, Carrie. I think I picked up like 99% of that, but it was pretty garbled. Sandy's raising her hand. Carrie, if you wouldn't mind, just to make sure that it's communicated clearly, if you don't mind typing up an email and sending it to the board and maybe to Sandy. Sandy could include it with the minutes if you're comfortable with doing that. Sandy, did you want to say something?
Carrie, I think I got most of it, Carrie, but you were garbled. But Andy, I did just get a meeting notification that someone is not able to get in.
Okay. We do have Jean back. Did they indicate, Sandy, if it was just a problem on their end or if it seems like it's something with the WebEx?
They didn't. It just says meeting is not working. I'm not able to get in.
Okay.
Andy, can I just say something really quickly? I noticed on the website when I went to log in that the information for the August 11th meeting is the first one that pops up. Some people who are trying to get in may not be clicking on the right meeting invite.
Okay, it looks like that was fixed. I'm on the SAU page right now and the 18th is on top, but thank you for that.
Andy,
Yes.
I would suggest if Sandy still has the invitation in her email, she could forward that to whoever is emailing her, and maybe if they use that link, it would work. It's just a suggestion.
Yep, no, that's a great idea. Sandy, can you reply with the link to the meeting? Yeah. Awesome. If you hear back that that person still cannot connect when we know they have the right link, please let me know and we will talk about suspending.
Okay.
For now, Chris, let's take the
Can
next
you guys talk slowly then?
well,
All right, next up, we have Melanie Camello on the floor.
Hi, can you hear me? Someone?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I just have a couple quick things. On the Hill back to school plan, it stated the remote option was VLAX. And I just wanted, you guys may already know this, but as of August 13th, VLAX has officially closed registration for grades K through 5. So VLAX at this time is not an option for K through 5. We really need to have a remote option, whether a parent's not ready or it's an immune compromised child or maybe a staff member. Some children that are immune compromised, the parents may not feel comfortable, and not that anyone's doing anything wrong. The daycares are following the actual state guidance, but we do have daycares in town that the staff is wearing masks, but the students are not. So, and they're following the guidance that was given by the governor. But then there's a question of cross-contamination if those kids are going into a classroom with a child that's immune compromised. So we really need to figure out a remote option. Another thing is hopefully we can, like as a district administration, the school board, have some flexibility on the remote part. I don't know, maybe paper packets on a couple of days or something. In the past week, there's been a lot of phone calls. We have some single moms and dads in town who are trying to figure out how to keep the bills paid, how to feed their kids. And there's a group in town that's trying to all band together and help watch some of these kids and help them with the remote learning pieces. But it's really difficult to hear a mom break down into tears that her job's not going to give her a Tuesday off so that their child can log on a computer at 8 a.m. And if she quits her job, she can't pay a rent or buy food for her kids. The community is trying to help out these families. And hopefully, as a school system, I just wanted to bring it up that we can try to find a way to be flexible and accommodating for some of these families too. Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie.
All right, next up we have Joe Montembaugh.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, we can.
All right, thanks for your time tonight. I appreciate you all coming on again. Reaching out, one of the hot topics tonight, I think, is certainly the extracurricular activities and the athletics. We as a family emailed the board, all 4 of us. Both kids received responses from one of the board members, and one of the hot topic items was whether or not kids could get to school for practices on the days that they had practice. To the best of my knowledge, Pembroke isn't concerned with getting the kids to school on any other day. I don't think that should be an issue. Certainly not one I think that the board should be worrying about. Kids, families, coaches should be the ones in charge of making sure they get there. Please take that into consideration. Sports is a choice. School is required. Sports is a choice. There's inherent risk at every level. We know that. We take advantage of that. We do what we got to do. Please keep that in mind when you're making your decisions tonight. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Joe.
Next up, I have Mike Brown on the floor.
Thank you. I just want to, number one, thank all of you for your service. And I know that this has probably encompassed more of your time than you ever imagined when you took this position. I would actually like to second quite a bit of what Joe just said and encourage you to consider letting these kids play. It is an opt-in situation. If you are looking at the local landscape, many of our local towns have already agreed to play. NHIAA is recommending that kids are allowed to play, and nothing from the Department of Ed is preventing it. I think all of those other issues are issues that parents can overcome. And as Joe said, there's an inherent risk that we as parents of athletes have always accepted, whether it's a concussion or sprained ankle, and not that we wish that for any of our athletes, but we just know that it's part of it. And in reality, this is in some way no different. And quite frankly, the data on this is pretty clear, no matter where you are getting your data from, that COVID for most of these kids is far less of a risk than some of these other things that they have faced in every season previously that we've always accepted. So again, thank you for your service. I mean to be quick, and please consider allowing these kids to play. They just want to play.
Thanks, Mike. Chris, this has been kind of a chopped up session, but how many hands do we have at the moment?
We just have one left.
Perfect. So we'll take that one and then we'll go to the phone lines.
Great. I would just ask everybody who's put their hand up to also put it down so that I can better keep track. But the next person up on the floor is Tanya with no last name.
And Tanya, if I could have you wait
Sandy?
just 1 second, I think Sandy's trying to get our attention.
The person who emailed me said that she was able to get in on the phone.
Perfect. Thank you. Tanya.
Hi, this is Tanya Davis. I'm not sure if that is referring to me, but I did have my hand up. So unless it's Tanya without a last name, I suppose it's my turn. Hi, guys. Listen, first, I'd like to say thanks for all the stuff you guys are doing. I see a ton of faces on there that I recognize. It really means that we all care about what our kids are doing. Right now, I did send an email to the whole school board regarding the sports situation and the decision to proceed or not proceed, and I didn't get any responses. I assume I'm just going to go under the premise that nobody got it or you guys were all too busy, because I know some of you, hi Andy, and I believe that you guys would have responded if you had a minute. So I'm going to, if you don't mind, just read the email. In it, I kind of introduced myself. Some of you may already know me, but I'm just going to, if that's okay with you, Andy, and the rest of the board, I'll just read the email out loud. And then if you have, then I can elaborate if I need to. Does that work for everybody?
Sure.
Okay, I think I can read it in less than 3 minutes because I talk pretty fast. Good. Okay. So what I wrote was, Dear Valued School Board, I am reaching out today regarding the difficult decision you are being asked to make regarding school sports in Pembroke for fall 2020 and beyond. I don't envy your position, and I appreciate what you're trying to do for the town. You have the ability to mitigate the negative impact this pandemic has had on our town. I am a resident with 2 children in the Three Rivers School and nieces and nephews in both Pembroke Hill and Pembroke Academy. And yes, we are a sports family. I think anybody who knows my name probably already knew that. Flag football, soccer, baseball, basketball, you name it, I'm on a sideline somewhere. Okay. I am the Suncook Spartans U14 soccer team head coach. I'm the president of Suncook Youth Soccer. I am the vice president of Suncook Athletic. So I feel like I can represent the sports community in Suncook for both Allenstown and Pembroke. I have been involved in youth sports in Suncook for more than 10 years, and I've seen in my time what team and club sports can do for a family. I also sit on the league operating committee for the State Soccer Association. Over the last several months, I have observed youth activities proceed for soccer, baseball, softball, hockey, and more. Many youth soccer organizations and other sports organizations have proven successful in running programs over the summer when the infection rates were higher, and it's possible to capitalize on that experience. I recognize that there are many logistics and facets to this topic, and I'm outlining below how these considerations can be addressed. Many of my examples will focus on soccer because honestly, that's where my heart lies, but these procedures can be extrapolated to apply in a variety of situations. Both the Governor's Reopening Task Force and the NHIAA have published return to play guidance on social distancing in sports and clubs. The procedures have included the restricted use of shared equipment, spaced staging locations for players when they are not actively playing or participating, and the wearing of masks to exit or enter the field or facility. Parents who are committed to having their children play can be required to wear face masks and practice social distancing on the sidelines. You guys can observe that on Buck Street this weekend. There will be almost 50 teams playing, and they are very strict about their guidelines.
Sorry, that's 3 minutes, just to let you know.
Okay, do you guys want me to stop or continue? It's up to you. I got maybe another minute of reading.
I think I definitely read your email, Tanya, and I'm confident in saying that the rest of the board members did too. If you would like, for the record, I can forward that to Sandy and ask her to include it with the minutes this week.
Yeah, I think that would be good. If I could just summarize the major points here. It is possible.
Could we please call time? This is April, because if we have other people, we have a lot on our agenda, and we did receive an email, and I just want us to be efficient on our time, not to be rude, but our policy is 3 minutes.
Sure.
I appreciate the policy. If I had known that it was read, I wouldn't have read it out loud. I would have summarized it. But thank you.
Thank you, Tanya.
I Todd, 1 second, Andy. Sorry. I just went through. I didn't recall seeing it in my email, and I do not see it, Tanya. If you could send that to me, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
this
Is
Jean?
it's ggoss@sau53.org?
Yes, it is.
All right, I'll forward it. Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And Andy, just forgive me. I wanted to make a comment for the benefit of everybody. I have read all of the emails that I've received, but they have been too voluminous for me to reply to. So I've read them. I've taken them in. I assume that that's what everybody else on the board did, and I apologize for not being able to send individual responses.
I'm in the same boat. So, Chris, it looks like we have a good chunk of phone calls. I'm scrolling back up the list, trying to find them again. Can we do 3 or 4 at a time? So just a reminder, if you're on the phone, Mr. Motique is going to open 3 or 4 phone lines. I'm going to say, okay, we've opened a new group of phone lines. If you're on the phone at all and you want to speak, go ahead and state your name. If I don't reply to you, it means you're still muted and I didn't hear you and you might come up the next time around. So this is a little bit awkward, but it's the best that we have. So Mr. Motique, if you want to open a few of them.
All right, I'm going to open a few. Here we go.
Okay, so there are some phone lines open. If you're on the phone and you want to be recognized for public comment, please state your name and wait to be recognized. Okay, we'll move to the next group.
Okay, next group.
Thanks. I've got 4 more open. If you're on a phone and you would like to speak, please state your name. Let's move on. All right, there's 4 more open. If you're on the phone and would like to speak, please state your name. All right, looks like 1 more group.
How do you know if I'm able to speak?
All right, the last 3 phone lines are open. If you would like to speak, please state your name.
I was riding my bike and it hurt. You don't know how much better the Cardinals got, though.
Yeah, he got so much.
All right, Chris. Thank you very much. Okay, so with that, we will move on to agenda item 3B, which is agenda review. I put my name on there, but I probably should have put Patty's name on there.
Thank you. We do have one item that we'd like to add, and that's a conversation about the Hill School internet bandwidth.
Okay, where's the logical place to put that? Under E?
Sure.
Okay, so under 3E, we will add a bandwidth at Hill.
Andy, this is Ann. I just have a question on agenda review.
Sure.
I have a lot of parents calling and asking, and they're confused on what kids are going to school, what the cohort, the alpha is. I can't find it in any of the packets. So is there something that you can address what alphabet is going, and also the days that they start remote, the days they start hybrid?
Sure. We'll add another bullet point under 3E, and we'll call it reopening recap. How about that? We can just get some general questions out there. I've heard a couple similar questions. We'll try to keep that to 5 or 10 minutes if we can.
Thank you.
All right. Agenda item 3C, gifts and donations.
Sorry, I had a question.
Sure.
Patty or Jean, do we need anything based on the meeting that we had?
You could ask to have a non-meeting at the end. That's the only topic that allows for a non-meeting, and that's if you're going to talk about negotiations. So you could ask for that at the end after you adjourn.
Would you prefer that we do that, or do we not need to do that?
Sure.
Okay. I'd like to add a non-meeting at the end, Andy.
Okay, Patty, would you mind, just for transparency's sake, and we've got 141 people on the line, can you give a brief what's a non-meeting so that people understand that we're not doing anything that we shouldn't do?
Yep.
Sure.
Go ahead, Patty.
Sure. So in the past, boards used to go into non-public session to talk about contract negotiations and collective bargaining agreements. And there's now a provision in the law that actually allows you to have what you call a non-meeting. So you're allowed to have this conversation about collective bargaining without posting it or opening it to the public. So it's not a non-public session about one of the small letters that are listed at the bottom of the agenda, but it's considered a non-meeting.
Thank you. Amy, did you have something you wanted to add quick?
Say not only does the law allow us to have conversations in that way, that's how the law categorizes this conversation. It's not allowed to be had any other way.
Thank you. Okay, I've got that on my list. So 3C, gifts and donations. Looks like we have nothing. Has that changed, Patty?
Excuse me, Andy, I just have a quick question on agenda review.
Sure.
In section 4, continued business board reports, we don't have those limited to 10 minutes. And I noticed everything else does, so I thought maybe we could limit that to 10 minutes.
Yeah. I honestly had thought about putting in an item that was for all the board reports other than the principal reports, but not many of those had met, so I just kind of left the time thing out. But yeah, the intention will be to keep that as brief as we can.
Thank you.
Yep. Gifts and donations, Patty?
I have nothing.
Okay, and consent agenda?
Still 0.
Perfect. So we will move on to the meat of our meeting tonight, which is agenda item 3E, school reopening. So the first thing that we have is an update on the metrics. I saw there were some things in the drive as well. Patty, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So I wasn't sure that we were going to be able to turn this around in time for the meeting, but we were able to pull together a draft. We looked at several plans and considered what was important to the board at the last meeting, or what we heard you saying, and that was something color-coded and something that was almost in a checklist format. So we use this plan. We can certainly post this tomorrow. We got it into the drive for the board members today. And it goes down with different considerations and whether the criteria are met for a full return, whether it's a reopening plan and a hybrid, when it sort of turns from yellow and then gets orange and then approaches the full remote, which is the final column. So we looked at both the community spread level by county, and we also looked at positive COVID results within our school community. So you can, I won't read it bullet by bullet unless you want me to, Andy. Do you want me to?
I've read it. I don't have that need. Other board members, do you want Patty to read it or give an overview?
Okay, great. So, and then the next category is staff absenteeism, and especially with nursing staff. Then is student absenteeism, and then is availability of cleaning and protective supplies to allow us to follow the state guidelines, and then finally compliance with protections. So those were the overall categories that we felt needed to be taken into consideration when we were talking about moving between the models and pivoting to remote and hybrid and full return.
Great. Thank you very much for your work on that and everybody else that was involved. I will open it up to board members for questions, concerns.
Andy, this is Amy. I have a number of things to say, and what I would love to happen tonight is that the board can, like what I would like to do is just share my input and questions for Patty and her team to collect, you know, not really so much of like a back and forth. I also don't, this is my preference here. I don't think we need to make a motion on this either at all or tonight. Because I think that this is just a first draft. So the first thing I wanted to say is I'm so grateful to see this. I think it's fantastic. I think Patty did a really terrific job with this, as with many other things. I appreciate the short turnaround time on all of this. And I think it's still a work in progress. I think that, you know, like everything, there's always room for improvement. And I have some thoughts to that. But generally, this is really great. I got to close my door. I'm sorry. Hold.
You're muted, Amy.
Said we were doing this real time. So here are my questions. I'm not clear on the first community spread level population numbers. I tried to do a little math, which I like doing math. I think I'm okay, but I got myself confused here. Like when it says, for example, less than one case per 100,000, what 100,000 people are we looking at? So for example, I learned there's approximately 1.36 million people in New Hampshire. So I think I'm doing the math correctly that 1 in 100,000 would mean 13.6 cases in New Hampshire. As a different way of looking at this, in Merrimack County, I learned there's about 150,000 people. So looking at that number, you know, 1 in 100,000 would be 2 people. It would actually be 1.5 people, but since people don't come in halves, I think you would round up to 2. So I wasn't really sure, like, which people are we looking at? Are we looking at the total population of Merrimack and Hillsborough counties? And we're looking for a 1 out of 100,000 in that. So that's where I just need some more clarification. Additionally, my thinking is that it would be safer if we looked at all of the counties abutting Merrimack County. And I, again, just confirmed on the map, you know, that would be all of the counties except Coos and Carroll counties. And I think we would be looking for the same rate throughout all of those counties, but for various aspects, you know, we go north, we go east, we go west, we go south. I think south is probably dominant, but to exclude the others seems ill-advised. I wasn't so different topic. I wasn't exactly sure what the yellow and the orange mean. You know, would it just be like, so let's say we went from yellow, then we went to orange. Is that just an awareness thing? You know, so like nothing changes, but we all now are aware that we're on the edge of having to go full remote? Or does it actually trigger a change other than awareness? And then another comment is, I think we need to consider timing, right? Like, so let's say, for example, we're in a hybrid and then I'm looking in the top right-hand corner here, we hit that 10 plus cases per 100,000. So in other words, we hit an accelerated spread. So then what? Does that mean like if the data comes out on Wednesday at 10 a.m., then like Thursday we all wake up and we go full remote? You know, or does it mean like in 24 hours? Does it mean the next Monday? And that same you know, issue goes the other way. Like, what if we're in remote and we realize like, hey, we meet all the criteria to go to hybrid, and those criteria are met on Thursday? You know, do we all of a sudden change from remote to hybrid from Thursday to Friday? So just having some sense of timing. I'm almost done. The last category, compliance with protections, I was a little bit confused there if community as used in that section meant inside the school system, outside the school system, or everything, because I think those are different things, and I just think it would be better to be clear on that. And then what I'd love to see for process is, you know, tweaks to this based on input received, but then I am interested in seeing a little bit of a more detailed document. And I'll just give one example. So for example, going back to that, let's see here, I'm not sure if it would fall into the availability of cleaning and protective supplies or compliance with protections. But we've talked about that ASHRAE standards for ventilation in the school districts. And Josh has talked about, like, that's kind of what he's following. In last meeting, we approved spending a boatload of money to purchase equipment to that end. And so, you know, I would want to know that these words on the matrix, that's what that means. Like, it means that we'll have that equipment in place and we'll have this and we'll have this. And I understand this is a high level view. And again, I'm super impressed and appreciative at Patty and the team for getting this done. But as we move forward, you know, filling in the details would be really helpful for me. That's it for me. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Patty, there were some specific questions in there. Do you want to address any of those? The things I wrote down quick were the yellow to orange change, the time frame that a changeover would happen if these numbers were reached, that sort of thing.
Sure, I can take a stab at it. So yes, the yellow versus the orangey amber color was meant to be, okay, we're starting to approach full remote. It's just sort of a heightened awareness, but we're still in hybrid, but showing that movement because full remote is the most restrictive. So it is just a, you know, the light's yellow, but it's about to turn red. And then what other questions? The timing, I think, is a great question and something that the board is going to need to decide. And I think it will have to do probably with prioritizing the list somewhat to say, look, if the first two happen, we're not waiting for a board meeting because this is so significant that we want you to go full remote with a little bit of notice. That type of, I think that conversation needs to happen. Happy to add some more detail. And I think for the populations, we were looking at the total populations of the counties that we referenced. And if the board wants us to add the other counties, we can certainly do that as well.
Andy, this is Ann.
Go ahead, Ann.
My question is for full return, it says -1 case per 100,000, and you're asking for Pembroke, Merrimack, and Hillsborough. Is that correct? If we have less, if we have at least one, we can't return to school.
Again, this is a draft and that can be a board discussion, but yes, that was our recommendation in the plan and certainly something the board needs to discuss further.
Can I just clarify a little bit? Because Anne, like for example, the population of Hillsborough County is just over 400,000. So 1 in 100,000 in Hillsborough County, depending on how you round, would be 4 or 5 cases. So
and that's, am I reading this? Sorry, Amy, go ahead.
That's okay. I just wanted to make that clarification.
And I want to make sure I understand it too. The way I'm reading that as titled as community spread level, that would be 4 or 5 new cases, right? Not the just 4 or 5 existing cases. Is that correct?
Correct.
The other question I have is, why are we including Hillsborough? Because looking at the maps, Pembroke doesn't touch Hillsborough County. I think that's a disservice to our residents because when we're looking at Merrimack and Hillsborough, there's a lot of nursing homes. And there's a lot of nursing homes that do have COVID, but the problem is some of these people were tested after they have passed away. So that's still going to show a positive test. I'm very concerned that we have Hillsborough on our list. And the only other question I have is compliance with protective. And in full return, it just says protective measures are followed by the community. So with Patty, would that be from what was in the yellow followed over to the green in that category?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So if we did go back full, it would show that the mask, right? Because that would be in that category, reopening plan hybrid.
Whatever protective measures we had in place were being fully followed. So we may have some, we may have none, whatever it is, they're being followed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Jean or April?
You know, today I picked up some more numbers. Statewide, there are 279 active cases. And I believe the majority of that probably is from the southern counties below us. But I'm with Ann as far as looking at it, and going back to Ann on her mentioning of the the nursing homes, long-term care facilities, that number has dropped quite precipitously in the past few weeks. Daily averages are down, but still kind of steady with what was going on a month ago. But looking at Pembroke and the surrounding communities, there is a very, very low infection rate. The positivity rate of the test coming back is at like 1%. So to include, statewide it's 1%, but to include every surrounding community or every surrounding county in this, I know there is travel between for pretty much all of us. But moving forward, we really have to focus on what's going on very close to us and keep our eyes on it. But, encompass the whole in what we decide in Pembroke, I think would be the disservice to parents, students, especially students who have really suffered more, I think, than a lot of the rest of us. So I just wanted to say that, and, we need to look a little closer, but be aware of what's going on outside of that area.
Thanks. April, did you have thoughts?
Yes. First, I would like to say I really super appreciate the administration team putting this together for the board. It's very helpful, streamlined, and so I want to thank you for that work. It's very, very helpful. So I heard my fellow board mates echo some of my concerns. So one of my concerns was already mentioned and addressed. What's the difference between the yellow and the orange? Also, as far as the community spread level by county, I'm just curious why Hillsborough was included in that, because Hillsborough includes some of our larger cities like Manchester and Nashua, and we're here in Merrimack County. And I understand we have an area school, but for the towns that send here, we have Pembroke, Allenstown, Epsom, Chichester. They're all within Merrimack County. So I would like to see that area encompass Merrimack County. I'm also thinking about who needs to manage this information. We need to keep it as simple as you can and streamlined, because honestly, as we go forward, ideally what I would like to see, if we're talking about our hopes and dreams, is if someone doesn't know what the status is of attending school that day, it's kind of like on our website, we could have kind of like a Smokey the Bear sign, so we know what zone are we in, or am I sending my kid to school. The other thing is I would like some clarification on community and that compliance with protections. If that's the school community, I think it would be helpful to clarify that that's the school community. And then the other thing regarding my last thing, the community spread level, I did see those cases, but I don't know if there was any consideration about the duration of time. I know some other states that when I looked at those, they're considering how much increase over a 14-day period time. So those were my thoughts. But overall, I really want to say thank you. I really appreciate this.
Thanks. My 2 cents, I guess, I would echo. I appreciate this coming together as quickly and as thoroughly as it is. A kind of a backup document when that makes sense and you guys aren't completely underwater, like Amy suggested, might make sense to give a little more details for stuff that doesn't fit on here. I think I tend to agree with the focus of it being closer to just Merrimack County, but would be interested in the reasoning behind including Hillsborough as well. And I do think the question of, when we hit these thresholds, what is the actual action? Is it we have 2 days to switch? Is it the next day? Is it the next Monday? Or whatever. I think that is one of the biggest questions that we have left. So I wanted to ask the board, I'm inclined, it seems like, so we've all got a lot of thoughts on this. We've all got, different things that we would like more information on. I think that this is going to be a fairly in-depth discussion. We're well over the 15 minutes we established for it tonight, which is not a huge deal, but I'm thinking this needs to be the main topic for the agenda next time. And I think, are you guys all comfortable with tackling it then? I don't think it necessarily needs to be taken care of before the first day of school. Can we organize our thoughts so that when we talk about it next time, we all have specific bullet points of things that we want answered or changed or to discuss or whatever? And my 2 cents again would be that what happens when a changeover needs to occur would be one of the big talking points. And the other thing that I would maybe like to see in here, if the board agreed, is language that basically says this is not a binding document. Basically, the board has the ability to override this if something crazy happens and we see that. I don't know what would happen that doesn't fit in one of these boxes, but I just wouldn't want to be bound to this in the situation where the board felt, oh no, something bad happened, we need to close, or something good happened and we need to open. I wouldn't want our hands to be tied by this. Are board members generally okay with gathering our thoughts, making detailed notes, and bringing this back to the table next time around?
Andy, this is Amy. I am generally okay with that. I wonder if it would expedite things at all to, like on Friday, if I put my thinking cap on and come up with some notes, if I were to share those with Patty at that time, as opposed to taking up more airtime at the meeting, I don't know if that would, just add to the work pile or streamline the work pile, but I think, Patty can let us know about that. I apologize. I did have one more significant question, which is, are these, how many do we have here? 6 rows. Are they connected by an and or an or? So what I mean by that is, does like, let's say if we're in hybrid, is it one of those things in the remote column happens and that triggers remote? Or do we have to have like all of those things going on to go into remote? Or is it like a majority of the things? I think just having everybody be on the same page with that would be super important.
Right. I agree. Patty, do you have a quick answer to that or no?
No, not in the quick turnaround that we did. We wanted to get you something, but I think there are, like you said, Andy, there's still a lot of conversation that needs to happen. And, we need to know if this is a guideline, or are we going to do like Amy suggested and say, if these 3 things happen, that triggers it, or is it, we're going to talk about it every 2 weeks when we meet. I think talking about it at the next meeting is a great idea.
Okay. Patty, Amy had a good question as far as sending things up the chain. Between now and then, my inclination would be, if it's things that are questions that you may be able to answer, then we send those along, get them answered ahead of time. But if they're, proposed changes, obviously we all kind of have to weigh in on those. So they may be things that need to wait. Is everybody okay with that method? I'm seeing nodding.
It's helpful for us, even if it's something that requires board discussion, because at least we can consider it ahead of time and think about it and maybe have an answer for you if it is in the form of a question. So okay. That's a great idea.
If you guys if the other board members want to funnel those to me, then I'll try to do like a daily wrap up so that Patty's not getting 17 emails a day. Like I'll try to do. My workday ends at 3 currently, so at the end of my workday, I'll check in with my SAU email, gather up all the requests and information for the day, and pass that on to Patty.
Andy, this is April. I'm a little confused. We just had a discussion about this. We did hear from our superintendent that this is a draft, so there could be some changes. Would there possibly be another draft coming out? Because I don't understand. We've had this discussion if we're basically going to be reviewing the same document or not. So I'm a little confused about what's being asked of us because we just discussed this document and provided some feedback.
Yeah, I mean, Sandy's got the feedback in the notes. I think that there are some concerns that are not going to be addressed right now. And so if people have other thoughts between now and the next meeting, we can get those addressed so that we can nail this down. I'm not sure, Patty, are you looking for us to actually vote on and approve this at some point? Or is this kind of a document?
Well, I think the board makes the decision on which model we're going to be in. So I think the most important decision
So are they
is
discussing today
if we're
gonna
gonna,
do sports or not?
order it, like
Are they
Amy
gonna
said,
say
is it
final
an
yes
and
or no
or?
if we're gonna do sports?
Right.
Can we get that muted, Chris? Thank you. So the board can give us that direction. So you could say, if these 3 things happen, we don't even need a meeting. We want you to make the call. Or, I think that's a bigger discussion.
Can I just jump in, Andy, for
Sure.
a second? I'll make a joke in super bad taste, which is, as the administration knows, if the board feels differently than the administration, then the board is going to go its own way. However, having said that, I am really interested in, Patty, your advice on that point. If you could just share your perspective for us to consider. If there's one thing on that chart that you think, if this happens, it's a definite automatic, no consideration this. Or if this is really squishy and you think this should be decided at a board meeting, or just, it would be really helpful for us to have that guidance.
Great, we can work on that. Thank you.
Okay,
Andy,
go ahead, Ann.
Oh, sorry. I have a question for you. So we have already voted on that we are going to start school remotely August 31st and until September 14th. On September 14th, we will be hybrid until the week ending October 9th. So my question is, if we make up this matrix, and it is fabulous, I failed to mention that earlier. There's a lot of great information in here. If we agree to this matrix and we find out week 2 into hybrid that these cases are way down, would we then switch to full school, or are we going to stick to our hard deadline of October 5th?
So as I understand it, and I know April likes to dig into the RSAs, so jump in if I'm incorrect here, but we have a specific approved or passed motion that addresses the first 6 weeks of school. So I believe, unless if there were a motion made to reconsider that and then to adopt this matrix instead of that, that could change it. Barring something like that, I believe we would have to stick with the decision that's made for the first 6 weeks, and we would basically be voting on implementing this matrix for, after that period has played out.
Okay. I was just looking for the timeline that I should have this information over to you and to Patty for my questions on the matrix. So
Sure.
this is
Yep, and our next scheduled meeting, I think, is September 8th. Is that correct?
September
And
1st?
like I said, I'm sorry?
Is it the September 1st?
I don't know. It says on the agenda it's September 8th, but I'd have to go back and look. The 1st is a Tuesday, right?
Yes.
Yeah. We'll talk about that
Okay,
a little
thank
bit
you.
later.
Andy, this is Amy. I had thought that our motion for 2 weeks of remote and 1 month, 4 weeks of hybrid had implied in it, like, unless that is inappropriate. So, for example, to Ann's question, if things go super swimmingly and we feel like, okay, well, in the beginning of the 4th week, so like we haven't finished the 4 weeks, the beginning of the 4th week, we really feel ready, like, let's go full time, everybody in school. Or alternately, what was that college that had like 1 week of in-person school and then went fully remote? If we have that sort of experience, I think we retain the authority to move ourselves to the correct mode.
Yep, we do. I agree. I just think procedurally what that would take is somebody making a motion to reconsider the previous motion. I think the motion that was approved for the first 6 weeks is quote unquote set in stone unless we specifically go back and open it up first. So just simply approving this matrix next time, if we doctor it up and like it and give it our stamp of approval, does not override that previous decision. That's not saying that we couldn't. We do hold the authority to revisit decisions, but it would procedurally, we would have to have a reconsideration of that motion. That's all.
I have another question. I'm sorry, I know we're way over time on this topic. I'm aware that this Thursday there's a district-wide board meeting, and I would like some information. Well, let me just sort of cut to the chase here. I think given current circumstances, it would make sense to have a discussion amongst the entire SAU about using this matrix for all of the schools.
Okay. If you think of it, Amy, shoot me an email. I can pass that on to Carl and see if that's something that he's considering talking about.
Andy, it's Gene.
Go ahead, Gene.
Just going back to the motion about opening hybrid for at least 1 month. I don't think that precludes any one of us from making a motion in that period to say at the end of that 1 month, if things are great, or I'm sorry, before the end of that 1 month, if everything's great on, October 11th, which maybe is a Monday or whatever, I'm not looking at a calendar, but it doesn't preclude anyone from saying everything's going great now, so on this date, we're going to switch gears and go full. Or if everything's going sideways, we're not going to wait that long to pull everything back. So, let's say on September 8th, somebody makes a motion to say October 11th, we're going full open if everything's great. I just don't want to put the administration and the teachers and the rest of the staff in a position where, okay, everything's great, tomorrow we're going full. There has to be, and I think that was my intention when I said 1 month during that motion, making it 1 month, that somewhere in there, depending on how things were going, we could pull back from that, or we could move forward from that before that 1 month time frame ended.
I gotcha. And so I will add this as a bullet point under the metrics discussion for next month. Just the procedure of how to handle the changeovers or something along those lines.
Andy, this is Ann. The only reason I was mentioning the dates is because the Pembroke School Board receives a lot of constructive criticism, and the parents are not understanding what's going on. So that's just why I wanted to put it out there that the parents knew we're starting August 31st, 2 weeks hybrid, 2 weeks remote. And then when we're starting hybrid, but even though we're starting hybrid on September 14th, there could be a chance that changes back to remote or full in school. That's the only reason why I mentioned that.
Yep. And I think you're on the right track. And I think, like everybody said, we definitely, if something major happened, we have mechanisms to make these decisions and change them. But I think we need to also send the community a signal like we do have a plan. And so the plan right now for the first 6 weeks is what we have presented and voted on in the past. That's not 100% absolute, but I think it's safe to say that in the current circumstances, nothing is 100% absolute. So I think everybody needs to understand that there's going to be a lot of flexibility asked, a lot of fluidity, a lot of pivoting, or whichever buzzword we want to use through this whole situation. But I think the bottom line is the plan for the first 6 weeks is the plan, but that doesn't necessarily mean the plan that it's impossible to change it.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay, so good discussion, but we're going to move on. Agenda item 3E, bullet point number 2, is probably why a lot of the 156 people are on the phone tonight. So I want to thank Mr. Vizina for joining us tonight. And I guess I will turn it over straight to him unless you have something that you want to chip in first, Patty. Awesome. Okay, Mr. Vizina, take it away.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, school board. Right now, we don't have to make a decision about ending sports. That's the biggest thing I think we need to know right now. We are currently following the NHI guidelines, phase 1 part of returning to play. It's going very well. We got 4 programs currently doing it: field hockey, girls basketball, football, and cross country. Kids are getting pre-screened before they come in. They're working out, but with masks on, unless social distancing can be maintained. There's no scrimmaging. It's all drill work and conditioning. So that's all been going well. Everybody's been on board. It's been great. The NHIA has also pushed back the start date of sports to September 8th, which is a good thing. It gives us time. Also allows for us to see how things deal with opening up with the schools themselves. So we got that. Games don't start until September 18th. So that's even more time for us to kind of kick the can down the road. Now, the biggest thing I see is I don't want to give up on anything just yet. These kids, and you heard them, parents as well, too. I mean, a lot of them, this is their life and stuff like that. If we can give them some sort of a season, I'm willing to do that. Now, the area ADs as well, we're working on a schedule that will be shortened, obviously, because the season's shortened, but more regional games, regardless of who we're playing, keep people in our area so we're not going all over different parts of the state. Also, they've got open tournaments scheduled for soccer, field hockey, cross country. So that helps. We don't have to play a certain number of games. It doesn't matter who we play. It doesn't matter what our record is. Kids can still get into the tournament. So that's a thing that they don't have to deal with. So golf and football are still being determined. So right now, I mean, I just would like to continue straight ahead, doing this, maybe even get up to more of a phase 3 of the NHIA guidelines and stuff. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. That's not the biggest deal. But come September 8th, if the numbers are good, let us start with tryouts and stuff.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. So I just want, if Sandy, if you're available, could you read the motion that was put forth at the previous meeting, just so that we are all on the same page?
Pull it up. I don't have last meeting.
Andy, this is April. I have that motion. Would you like me to state the motion?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, and if you've got it, or I'm sorry, April, if you've got it right in front of you, go ahead. That would be fantastic.
Sure. The motion was to suspend in-person, school-sponsored co-curricular and extracurricular activities, including but not limited to field trips, sports, and recreation, when academic instruction is limited to the hybrid or remote models, or until the state of emergency due to COVID-19 is rescinded or terminated by the governor.
So what I'd like to do, because this is, we've all received a lot of emails this week. It's an important topic. It's a topic that a lot of people care about. I want to keep it, on track. So what I'd like to do, at least to start, is just go, excuse me, around to each of us and get our initial thoughts. And then we can have a little bit more of a discussion, or we can do a second round, or whatever's necessary. But to get started, I would just like to hear from each board member where you sit on this, what your thoughts are, if you have questions for Mr. Vizina, anything like that. Maybe we'll start with Gene.
Sure. Yeah, have to echo that. I received many emails concerning this topic. As I was last week, I am still in the same position this week, that this whole situation that we find ourselves in right now has robbed the students of their spring activities, everything that went on in the spring, aside from the co-curriculars. And as a board member, I do not believe it is in our best interest to deny these student athletes, those that participate in other co-curricular activities, the opportunity to participate. I think we should leave it up to the governing body, the NHIAA, and the parents and the students. So as a board member, I am not in favor of limiting the ability of student athletes or any other student that is involved in co-curricular activities moving forward. I do not want their ability to participate limited.
Thanks, Gene. Anne.
I have concerns. I've been having a child in sports for the last 25 years and still going. So I understand. I know sports. We travel hours and hours to watch our kids play. I had 2 questions. I need legal advice to find out that if we set the precedent that we will continue sports or co-curricular, what's going to happen to us on the children that we are basically discriminating against because they can't participate and they wanted to participate. That was my huge question, and I don't have any legal guidance on it, and I really need us to discuss with our lawyer. The second thing is I've looked over the Pembroke Academy waiver for athletic policies and expectations. Nothing on this waiver has anything to do with COVID. Again, another legal question. If they conduct contact with another player, come up with COVID, what's the legal recourse that we have?
Thanks. Mr. Vizzini, do you want to tackle either of those? Are you in a position to tackle either of those?
No, those are all questions that are very valid and should be answered by someone above me.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I get it too. It's the whole liability. There's assumed risk and stuff like that. I can say though, and as far as not being fair to every kid and stuff, I mean, I know if in hybrid, if we were to do something, a question of getting rides to and from and stuff like that. But I've talked with all my coaches and they know that flexibility is going to have to be, you know, done to make this all work if we're going to do something. Kids aren't going to be able to make every practice or every game. You know, we're willing, you know, I'm willing to, you know, relax rules and things like that to make this happen, you know, just knowing that it's a hardship for a lot of kids.
Patty, is it something that we can send a kind of a, what's the word? A general email to our legal counsel and say, you know, what's our liability here? What are there things that we need to worry about, and just see if there are particular items that they suggest we take action on?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. This is a conversation that's been happening around the state. Lots of schools are asking. Amber did reach out to our liability company, asking their advice. And yeah, honestly, I don't think people are really wanting to touch that issue in terms of taking the responsibility to say, here's the waiver, here's what you need to do. So reaching out to Dean to ask for more clarification is something I can absolutely do for you.
Andy, just to follow up on that, is there
Sure.
something that we can add to our waiver? Because it does say that children have to travel together as a team, and right now they're most likely not able to. So is that something that the administration might look to do as adding just to part of the waiver on here, just for this situation?
I'm seeing nodding from both our athletic director and our superintendent, so it seems like yes.
Yeah, so like Mr. Vizina said, we've been having conversations about policies and making exceptions and rules such as all students must ride the bus, a few transportation rules that we would like to discuss and probably make some accommodations. We can add it to the waiver or do it in a separate policy, sure.
Thank you, Patty.
Is that all, Ann?
Yes, thank you.
Let's see. I talked to Jean. April.
This is April. So there's two concerns really that I have. One is the exposure of our students. Obviously, one of the reasons that we're opting for remote and also hybrid is to decrease exposure and possibly trying to limit exposure to COVID-19. I think I would be a lot more comfortable if we could maybe limit that to just this would happen with students within our own school instead of going out in the community. The other thing I'm really concerned about is we don't even have students in the building yet. And in one of our past meetings, what I heard Amber tell us as the business administrator is if the school board exhausts all of the funds that were voted in for this school year, that we have to have another meeting. There is some concerns with the unknown of what the financial impact may be. And I feel like the priority should be educating our students. And if that means the basics, you know, it hurts for all of us. I mean, yes, I get that kids are hurting, but basically limiting exposure not only to our kids, but also to our staff. We want our staff to be well. We see professional players opting out, and that should be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, April. Amy.
Thanks, Andy. I don't have a lot of thoughts on this. I think I lean towards deferring to the NHIAA on this. I come from a fourth generation of Patriots seasons tickets holders. I really value sports. I get it. The one, getting into the weeds comment I had is I noted Mr. Vazina said that there was screening, and there's been some discussion of whether on the school academic side, screening would be done by parents only or by parents and at school. And I guess I don't need an answer right now, but I would just encourage that the screening be done at the athletic event by the coaches or whoever the appropriate staff is, and not just foist that burden on the parents.
Thank you. My thoughts, I guess, as far as not doing sports, I do see the, I agree with what April said about the financial piece. And I think spending a significant amount of money on sports when we're worried about financials is something to be considered. That said, me personally, I think that the need for an outlet, the need for the personal growth that sports offer, the need for just these kids to be able to do something social is high and overrides that, in my opinion. And what I said last meeting still holds to me. I mean, you'll all remember, and the notes will show, or the minutes will show, that I was pushing for full remote to start the school year. I take this virus quite seriously. I'm concerned with the possibility of my own children being in the building. But where I land on sports is it's optional. School is not optional. Our children have to get educated, but nobody has to play football. Nobody has to run cross country or play golf. So each family has the opportunity to make these decisions on their own. And so for me, I can't see any merit in canceling these activities, given that they're not forced, they're not for a grade, they won't impact that person. And if a student and a family decide to opt out, I think that is a student and a family decision. I guess I will open it up for just a little bit of conversation if anybody has any other thoughts. Actually, Patty, I want to give Patty and Mr. Vazina one more chance to chime in too. Patty, did you have anything?
Or before I give my opinion, I wanted to let the board know that we did talk to Chief Gilman. He joined a principals meeting just to talk about some things in general, and did bring up athletics and asked us to share his opinion that idle hands tend to get into trouble, and that he was a strong advocate for giving the kids that outlet and offering them the ability to play sports. So we promised we would share that. So I wanted to do that. And then secondly, I think, earlier in the summer when I sat with Mr. Vazina and Mr. Morris, and we talked about, are we going to let kids come back and start working out and doing some drills? And we were very, very cautious. And we just started with a couple of groups, and, there's no contact, there's no touching equipment, socially distanced, and the kids were amazing. And that's why we sort of slowly let some other teams come back. And I think that they will do anything to be able to be out there. And I'm really concerned with the students that have sort of been stuck in home without any physical activity. And our coaches are excited. They've had a lot of creative ideas about how to make this happen. We know that transmission is much, much lower when kids are outside. The teams are it's much easier to social distance. We're not confined by a classroom with X amount of square footage. So, I would advocate for letting the program move forward with Mr. Vazina at the helm, making sure that everything's running smoothly.
Andy, this is Ann. Can I suggest that we do table this to the next meeting, because Mr. Vazina says we do have ample time, and if we have more information on the adjustments that we can make to the waiver.
Sure. You have to, if you want to do that, you need to make a motion though.
I make a motion that we table the motion that April had to suspend co-curricular and extracurricular to the meeting on our next school board meeting, which I believe you said it was the 8th.
This is April. I'll second that motion.
All right, discussion around the motion to table.
Andy, this is Amy. I'm concerned that, well, I'm concerned as a person and a school board member and a parent, and I'm concerned that parents and administration might be concerned about starting school without knowing if sports are on or off. You know,
They're currently on right now. We're not changing anything. Everybody's still practicing. Everybody's still trying out for the teams. That's all still going on. Is that correct, Mr. Vacinas?
You're muted, Fred.
Yeah, right now it's just summer stuff, so not every team is practicing. September 8th is the first day that we can get, tryouts going and stuff like that. So we kind of need to know if we are going to continue on down this path, okay, and then adjust as the numbers come in, with reopenings of school and stuff like that. I think that's what we can decide tonight. But I don't know how you guys have to put that as a motion and stuff like that. That's what I would like to see, that we have the okay to continue on down this road, start sports on the 8th. And if we have to adjust, as the season goes on, we adjust.
And I apologize, Mr. Racina, because I have a lot of emails and the parents are saying they are all participating. They are all doing this already, that this wouldn't do any kind of a change. That's why I made the motion.
This is April. I seconded the motion because I heard Mr. Vecina say earlier that we have some time. I mean, right now this board has not made a decision about sports for the 2020-2021 school year. And also it would be very helpful to get the legal advice regarding liability from our attorney. So that's why I seconded.
Thank you. My concern lies with just pushing this another week. There's 173 people on the meeting. Our numbers have been good lately, but I'm going to take a stab that a lot of those people are here because it has been on the agenda that we were going to take this up tonight. So personally, I'd hate to see it pushed. I do understand wanting a little bit more information. So yeah, I guess I'm not in favor of tabling it, but I understand what you guys are saying.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, was that a board member? Okay.
No, it was not.
Is there discussion, any other discussion before we take a vote on the motion to table?
Andy, last week we tabled it, and just for clarification's sake, is it still tabled? Or do we have to move to entertain another?
We
motion
haven't.
to table it?
Yeah, we haven't taken a vote on it. Technically, I guess it's tabled till we vote on it. So yeah, technically we probably don't need a motion to go ahead. Amy.
this is Amy. I think our conduct in taking this up and discussing it amounts to taking it off the table.
I would agree with that. So we either need to table or take action. Any other discussion before I call a vote?
This is April. I just want to add that at the end of the day, I think it's just important that the board has this discussion, no matter where the vote comes out, that it's very important that this is a discussion that's had by the board. So thank you all for entertaining it.
Yep. Okay, with that, I will call the vote. The motion is to table a decision on changing school sports and not sports, but co-curriculars and extracurricular activities until our next meeting. On a roll call vote, April.
Yes.
Anne.
Yes.
Jean.
No.
Amy.
No.
And I'm a no. So the motion is defeated. So that means we need to take action. Is there any further discussion before I call the question for the motion from the previous meeting? All right, hearing none. Anne, go ahead.
My only comment is that I'm unsure why we're going to vote on this when we need to have everything that we're concerned about is COVID, but that's not even on the waiver, and we don't know our liability. So I don't even see how we can vote on it.
Yeah, other discussion?
Can we vote separately on the waiver?
Don't see why not.
Do we have this is April, do we have a waiver to vote on? Like that's something that would need to be presented to the board to review.
Right, so we can, when we get that waiver, we can vote on it at that point in time.
Or we could simply there could be a motion after this vote is taken to add language around COVID to the current waiver or something like that. Or if we want to wait until next meeting so we can review it, that's fine too. But yeah, we can certainly take that up separately.
Can I make a suggestion, Andy?
Sure.
If the interest in the board is to wrap this up tonight in terms of just the athletic piece, I think it would be okay to vote on the athletics, and then I could go and gather the information from the attorney that you've asked for and you're concerned about. And even if you don't need to vote on the waiver, we can bring it back to you and explain what the attorney had to say and show you what the new waiver looks like. Someone could always reconsider however the vote turns out tonight, but we can keep those two separate, but also address your concerns with the legal aspects.
And my question was, the legal aspect is not just the waiver, it's concerning the children that, with my vote this evening, we will discriminate against because they are not able to participate. That was my other concern. Thank you.
This is April. I'm just wondering, do our principals have any input? Because I believe that we heard from Mr. Marston that he wasn't sure how sports could happen. I'm not sure if that would impact any decisions either.
Sure. If Mr. Morris, you want to chime in?
Sure. Freddie and I have talked a lot about this, and we have time. And I think when he was talking about flexibility being a key word through all of this, that goes both with the families as well as with our coaches and us. And it is certainly not our intent to discriminate against anyone based on transportation needs. And so the policy surrounding play and attendance and practices would be, wouldn't be observed if there were transportation issues. So I think that there are ways in which we can work around that. We have more flexibility now than we've ever had from the NHIAA, given our circumstances, and I think we have an opportunity to take advantage of that.
Thank you. Mr. Marston?
Yeah, I would echo what Dr. Morris said. I mean, I think it seems like every day things begin to change and you see things in a different light sometimes. I'm not sure how our soccer programs would go and run, but there's certainly enough interest. I think a number of people have expressed that they'll get their kids there if they can, and we can try to work on how to get students there if we need to. My concern is one of my bigger concerns is the complete basically cancellation of all activities. And there's a lot of activities we can do remotely. And I want to maintain those as much as I can. And I also want to make adjustments as we go for athletics. It's not just athletics. The athletics, and anybody knows me knows my background in athletics. And they're critical to what we're doing. But there's a lot of other things. We have drama, we have student council, we have yearbook, we have a number of things that can be done remotely and done well remotely. We're still sitting, we're waiting on board decisions from other, we're in a very small league, and there's only one team currently that has said they'll play. So whether we do that, do we do just our surrounding towns, we need the flexibility to try to work some of these things out. Now, having said that, if all of a sudden we get reports that there's issues, then we can shut down. It's a lot easier frankly, it's easier to shut down than to start up again. So once we shut down, starting up again is a lot of work. It's a lot easier to be able to say, this isn't working, I'm sorry, we have to postpone. So I'm in favor of giving us some time. The NHIA, while the middle school does not follow NHIA guidelines because we're not a member, we certainly mirror what the high school does as often as we can. So I'm certainly in favor of trying to work some of these things out as we go forward.
Thanks, John. Other discussion? I guess I would add, I'm certainly not a lawyer, I didn't write Webster's dictionary, and I hesitate to say this because I don't want to sound confrontational, but it's on my mind and I think it appropriate. I personally would not use the word discrimination in this case. Every year, sports are offered, clubs are offered, and I'm sure that there are students that every single year that is not affected by a pandemic cannot attend those things because their family can't arrange transportation or any other family decision is made that just says, no, I'm sorry, you can't play that. So while I understand that having a hybrid schedule or a remote schedule would certainly add to the hardship of transportation and other factors, the school simply offering sports, I don't think we can call that discrimination. I mean, there are flights to Hawaii offered every day, and as tempted as I am, I cannot afford them, and that doesn't mean I'm being discriminated against. It just means my circumstances dictate that I can't go to Hawaii right now. That's all.
Andy, I'm just using the word because it was in the emails that I have received.
Understood.
Andy, this is April. I feel like a lot of this conversation has been focused mostly on sports. I think Mr. Morrison did a really good idea. A really great job on, just informing the board that there's things that can still be done remotely very well. So, the motion was not to shut down all of these things, but there's things like field trips that are concerning. During COVID, does the board support, this kind of addresses that, and maybe there needs to be a different motion, but do we support field trips at this point in time? And so it's kind of encompassing all of those things. It's not limited to sports. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. If there's no other discussion, April, could I ask you to read the motion one more time before I call the vote?
Sure. The motion is to suspend in-person school-sponsored co-curricular and extracurricular activities, including, but not limited to, field trips, sports, and recreation when academic instruction is limited to the hybrid or remote models of education or until the state of emergency due to COVID-19 is rescinded or terminated by the governor.
Thank you very much. So we will take up that question on a roll call vote. I will start with Ann.
I have to abstain because I do not have the information that I need from legal and also the waiver. Thank you.
April?
Yes.
Amy?
No.
Jean?
No.
And I'm a no. So that motion fails. So we did have some questions about waivers and that sort of thing. We do have other stuff to get to tonight, but is there anybody that would like to make a motion regarding any of the other topics that we kind of touched on?
Andy, this is Amy. I would like to make a motion in an effort to address those concerns, which I believe are valid. I also unfortunately think they fall into the bucket of things that nobody has an answer for right now because we're in unprecedented times, but we want to paper our file and show that we asked the right question. I also, though, am going to restate my concerns that the board use its time and its talents at a really high level. And so I haven't written this out, but I would like my motion to be something like, I move that we direct the superintendent to assure through advice of counsel that the waiver form for athletics is adequate in the current pandemic. So that's my motion. And what I mean by that is, I don't think it's our job to read all the words in the waivers for sports. I think that's an administrative job. And so, but I think we can give the direction like, hey, it's a pandemic, make sure you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's here. So that's the motion that I would make.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Jean. Discussion around the motion proposed by Amy.
This is April. My concern on taking up this item before we hear back from the attorney is I'm not even sure that if it's a school-sponsored activity, what limitations can we put in that waiver? And so I feel like I need input from the attorney in order to vote on this. Thank you.
Thanks. Others?
My concern, this is Ann, my concern with Amy is, yes, a broad overview of the waiver, but we have to understand as a school board, we're in charge of financials. And so if this comes back, this could be having the Pembroke School District open for huge liability if 1, 2, 4 of our athletes or students come down with this. And, you know, we didn't ask them ahead of time. Do you realize this could happen?
Thanks. Anybody else? All right.
Yeah,
Amy,
no,
go ahead, Gene.
I was thinking. I think we're asking the athletic director and the superintendent to add waiver, and we would have the opportunity to review that waiver. Is that correct?
That's not correct. The motion was to give the direction to the superintendent and athletic director to put information in there concerning COVID. Is that right, Amy?
You missed one critical piece, was that the information in the waiver would be the information that legal counsel advised would be sufficient for pandemic situation. But yes, I just am not of the opinion that the board needs to review every underlying document associated with the day-to-day operations of school.
Right, and that's what I was saying. We would have the, you know, we don't as a board have to review it, but individually we could do that. And if there is a concern, then this question can be revisited. All these questions can be revisited. So, you know, we've given direction, and that's what our purpose is. So that's what I was trying to, you know, hopefully trying to clarify.
This is April. We still don't even know if there's a clause added in there. That's what we need to know. I mean, does that really save us from liability? Are we still, would the school district still be on the hook for the liability? No one's really answered that question for us. And I think what's important is, yes, kids can opt into sports, but all of our kids don't get the option to opt out of school. That's mandatory. And so someone who is playing sports and possibly expose, if it continues to expose themselves to kids outside of our schools, they're bringing that into our schools to the kids who are not in sports, and that's a concern. But thanks.
Thank you. Any others? All right, Amy, are you in a position to repeat that for me?
Maybe. I didn't write it down.
I tried, but I wasn't fast enough.
I know. Actually, Sandy, how did you do capturing it?
A motion to direct the superintendent and athletic director to assure through advice of counsel that the waiver form for athletics be current in the time of this pandemic.
All right, on a roll call vote. Gene?
Close enough?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Ann?
No.
Amy?
Yes.
April?
Based on Sandy's wording, I will vote yes.
And I'm a yes. So the motion carries. Thank you, Patty and Fred, for all the information tonight. And if you could talk with council and have them propose language for our waiver, that would be fantastic. Okay, so we will, oh, actually, do we still have, no, the motion table we took care of. So I think we're all set to move on, right? Sandy, am I okay to move on? I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Great, thank you. Okay, agenda item 3E, bullet point not numbered, reconsideration dates. I put this one on. I am not sure how far we want to get in the weeds with this tonight. I just wanted to kind of put the topic out there. It's something that probably doesn't need to be determined right away, but probably sooner the better. And so basically the question came up in public comment last week, and I believe it was a good one. We have, through our plans, we have offered as much choice as possible between multiple learning models. So if hybrid is happening, we've asked the schools to offer a remote plan if staffing can handle that. So the question came up, when can we change that, right? So if I've selected that my child is going to be fully remote and they are learning that way, and I decide now it's safe, or I decide it's not working out well for my kid or whatever, at what point can we, can I switch models for my kids? I guess I would ask Patty and maybe the principals to chime in on this and see if they have recommendations. I know I've looked at some other school plans, and a fairly common thing is that the decision that you make is for a marking period. So one, sorry, I'm blanking on the word, one report card area. And I think that, again, like we talked about before, I think whatever decision is come to could change, if something got real good and we could send everybody back to school, and, then we could maybe modify that. But I'm looking for some direction. I think it's a question that a lot of people in the community are going to have. And I think it's something worth the board discussing. So I would like to hear what the principals have to say about that.
So Andy, we talked about that today, and we've the principals have made a lot of progress and coming up with some really creative ideas on how to offer remote instruction. It's a little bit different at the high school with the certifications. However, in John and Wendy's case, because of the staff that we have to redirect to make this happen, and they can speak to it better than I'll be able to, but if we had students wanting to come back, we would almost have to have enough come back so that we could then redirect that teacher back into the classroom. So we had talked this morning about some kind of a wait list, that you express your concern, I really want to come back. And then, okay, well, if we have 5 students that want to come back, then we can bring everybody back and make it work. So those are the kinds of things that we're talking about right now. And then if Wendy and John have something to add, they can do so.
Thank you.
I can jump in a little bit. So pretty much we might have a little bit of leeway at first, when we looked at our numbers. So the people I've talked to, parents I've spoken to, we've said, we'll look at it on a case-by-case basis, but there will come a point where we wouldn't be able to make that change without actually having that wait list and having a certain number decide that they want to make the change to be able to free up the staff member. So initially we might be able to make a couple of those, but then it will come a point where we wouldn't be able to without putting too many kids in a classroom and things like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Three Rivers currently, and I know we're going to look at some of the survey results, but currently we're still working on those schedule, which has been quite a task. But we currently are going to be basically able to offer a remote class, and I think I said it last time, but we have typical class load is 5 blocks a day. One of those will be remote. The other would be so-called in person. Now, I'm really torn with this idea of when can kids come back, because I'm really struggling with the thought that a child might be really struggling in an environment that they're in, not maybe really by their own choice. So so a few parents have reached out to me, and I said I'd like to be as flexible as we possibly can. However, having said that, when a child comes back in from remote setting, we may need, not unlike what Wendy said, we may need some time to make that adjustment. We may need more than 1 or 2. It really all is going to depend on the numbers and the situation. And I want to remain flexible, but I also want to make sure that we can offer the best situation we can for those kids. So it's a really tough decision for me.
Thank you. Yeah, and that kind of answers the questions that I had around it. I think, flexibility is best. It makes sense that, we may not be able to accommodate every request as soon as it comes in because we do have staffing concerns. But I just wanted to make sure that it was on the top of everybody's minds, and just like 5,000 other things that are on the top of your mind. Mr. Morris, was there anything that you wanted to add? I know the high school is kind of unique in this.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what Mr. Marston said. Selfishly, it's actually quite easier for us to have students in the building. And, so we want to have that flexibility. There may be instances, particularly when we get closer to the semester break, where it makes more sense to wait until the start of second semester. But, quite frankly, and more important than, the smooth operation of the school is if we have a student that's really struggling 4 weeks into VLAX, it's very tough for me to say you've got to, sit on ice for a few months, and then they're in a credit deficit because they, made a decision without, knowing whether or not it'd be successful for them. So, I'd really like to have as much flexibility as possible for that, take it case by case. But quite honestly, the default would be to try to get them back in the building.
Great. Other board members have questions about this?
This is April. What I'm hearing from all of our principals is that you'd like to offer as much flexibility as you can, but you have to manage your staff and your resources. But I'm also curious, would it help to manage expectations if something was put out there that, this will be reconsidered at a 9-week mark or a 6-week mark, just so parents know, like, when is a good time to request that? And obviously, if come to us on a one-on-one basis if you need something before then, just to set expectations, really.
Yeah, I think the 6-week mark may make sense. 9 weeks, if they're really struggling in 9 weeks, it could be difficult for them to transition back, particularly if it's a semester-long class. But I also agree, April, that it also makes sense to say, please get in touch with us, us or the school counselors, to try to address any issues if they may have them.
Andy, this is Ann. I appreciate all the principals discussing that if children have a hard time with what was chosen, at the point where they chose it, they thought that might work out for them. But, the situations do change for children. So I really appreciate you looking at if they're struggling, they're struggling. They're not going to be able to get through it. But the other question I have is probably for non-public, but do we have an issue with staffing shortage?
Did you want me to speak to that, Andy?
Yeah, to the extent that you're able to, it would be great.
Sure. So we have been working with HR and the EAP on coming up with the criteria from the last motion that I could establish criteria to accommodate requests if possible. So we've been working on that, and we're working through individual requests, and we're going to do our best to be able to accommodate. I can, without divulging a lot of personal information, I can tell you that the childcare is one of the bigger issues because the state is not doing the same thing. We didn't get guidance to, everybody's doing hybrid on Tuesdays and Thursdays for one cohort, and the other days, people have different flex days. So if they're teaching in Pembroke and they live in a different district, their children may be home 2 days a week. That is reason it qualifies for leave under the Families First Act, but the teachers don't want leave. They want to teach and they want to be here. So we're going to try to figure out and be creative and try to see if we can make that work between the families who want remote and the teachers who have some scheduling issues of their own. So we're still working through that. I'm not at the point where I would say that we're in trouble in any given school, but I will update you as we go along.
Thank you, Patty.
Thanks. Any other questions regarding reconsideration of educational model?
Gene. So I probably looked at maybe some of the same information that you did, and I appreciate administration addressing the issue, thinking about it. Up to a certain extent, what they've echoed is they can be flexible, and I think parents should be aware that we can say, the administration can say they're flexible, but that flexibility is limited, and a decision made right now could affect the whole semester. Even if the child but they may want to send them back if their child is not struggling. Well, that may not work. There has to be some sort of maybe criterion set up, and leave that to administration, that, and an understanding going out to parents that, yeah, this is a possibility that your child may come back, but there's a very real possibility they may not. So that's a communication issue, I think, that needs to be sent out to the parents. And since we're 2 weeks out from remote right now, it's a decision they need to make almost immediately, to know that it could be a far-reaching decision. Opting in and out willy-nilly is not going to work.
Yep. Thanks, Gene. That's actually another reason I wanted it on the agenda, is just so that we were speaking about it in public and so that people could hear just that. I trust that the parents in our district are thoughtful in doing what's best for their children. But just a gentle reminder to put a lot of thought in this decision, and that it may not be a thing where you can just switch whenever you want. It's most likely not that type of situation. Anything else before we move on? Great. So the other bullet point that we have before we get to the 3E items that we added at the beginning are survey results. So Patty, do you want to give an intro, or do you want to go right into the principles?
We added those. I apologize. We got them into the drive a little bit late. We've had a lot going on, but they're there. We'll have the principals review them, and then we can post them tomorrow. So if we want to just go one by one, the principals can share the results with you.
Sure. Why don't we start with Wendy?
Okay. So the key results that I gave you, those we've been updating those on about a minute by minute basis. If you take a look at so far right now, we have about 63 that chose full remote through PHS, an additional 6 through VLAX, and we can talk a little bit about that in a second. And then 249 that chose hybrid, and we have about 7 that are choosing to unenroll at this moment. As of this morning, we still had, when I went through all the actual survey data, we had multiple entries, so I had to delete quite a few of those. But when we looked at it, we've been making phone calls all day. At this point, we're waiting on 27 more responses so that we can be 100% accurate in where we're at. And as far as transportation goes, right now we're at about 143 that will require bus transportation of any form. And then we do have it broken down as far as whether they need AM or PM. So those are pretty accurate numbers. Like I said, we're just waiting on getting those 27. We've left messages with everybody. Hopefully we get those tomorrow, and then we are building our schedules. We are very, very close. I know parents are eager to hear. Our goal is, once we have this information, to push that out as soon as possible. We'll notifying parents on their cohort first. We still, due to how many teachers we're going to need for remote learning, might have to make some adjustments as far as who they're assigned to. So that information will be put out hopefully sooner rather than later, but could be pushed into next week.
Thank you very much. Are there specific questions for Wendy?
Suzanne, I just want to say thank you for the update.
Great. Mr. Marston.
Yeah, we're not unlike what Wendy was saying. This, even though we had a closing date of Wednesday, the numbers keep changing. And some people did put in more than once, and so we've had to filter some of that out. However, if you can see on your drive, I don't know if you can see your drive, but those are percentages. I have a tendency to like numbers because numbers mean more to me when I'm scheduling than a percentage. So we have approximately 203 that have asked for hybrid. We have had 52 remote using Pembroke. We've had approximately 10 remote with VLAX and Pembroke. We have had 1 that's unenrolled, and I know there's at least 1 or 2 more coming. We've actually had approximately 110 requests for Chromebooks. 15 people feel like they're going to need support with lunches. We have 93 that are requesting busing for AM and PM. There's 31 that will only need PM and 3 that need AM. and families providing transportation will be 130. These numbers are continually moving. Not a lot right now. We certainly don't have all of our students accounted for, and we're working on that. We are by default placing the kids that we haven't heard from right now into hybrid. And we are hopefully to be able to, what's today, Tuesday, we are almost done with our scheduling. We did send out I think we included you on our message to families, and we're looking to have our schedules published Thursday. And on those schedules, there will be a marking that tells them what cohort group they are in. It will either be A or B. It will be next to their homeroom in their schedule. So we're very close to doing that. I do, while I'm there, I do have to kind of give a shout out to Heather Ferdima, who was our one of my office staff members who's put in a huge amount of work doing data entry to get these schedules going. But that's where we're at.
Thank you very much, John. Dan.
Okay, so we had 544 responses. Admittedly, I think the response rate goes down when those students are a little older. So, we didn't get a 100% response, but the survey is still open and we are continuing to receive, data from that and making adjustments. Out of that number, we had 468 students that identified hybrid, 5 students that are going homeschool, 14 students that would like a combination of VLAX and Pembroke Academy remote, 4 students that wanted full VLAX, and 50 students that requested full remote through Pembroke Academy. And then just to give an update, we had 5% of our respondents requested a change in cohort based on travel accommodations for, families, blended families with different last names. School counselors did return on Monday, so they've been in the building for 2 days. We had a scheduling thing that we had to work out with math classes, and a one call now will go out tomorrow, officially releasing schedules, walking through what we're looking at for a schedule for August 31st. In addition to that, cohort information, and then all of that will be followed by introductory emails from the teachers beginning on the week of August 24th. And then all of this will be reiterated in the 6th edition of my summer video series, which can be found on One Call Now Communication, the PA homepage, or on my own YouTube channel. So there you go.
Thank you, Dr. Morris.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Those videos are great. I think I forgot to take questions for John. Does anybody have questions for either one, middle school or high school?
Andy, this is Ann. I didn't write down fast enough. How many children need lunches at Three Rivers?
Yeah, according to the survey of 15.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions regarding survey results?
Andy, this is Ann. For PA, the 468, was that all Pembroke Academy students, or was that the area also?
It was all Pembroke Academy students. Those students are from Pembroke as well as the other feeder towns. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, thank you. And then the second question is, did you have any unenrolled? Some of the other schools mentioned how many they had unenrolled altogether.
We had 5 that identified homeschool, so those would be unenrolled.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. If there's no more questions, we will move on. I've got notes here for other things under 3E that we added at the beginning. Patty, bandwidth at the Hill School.
Yes, so I had mentioned before that during the remote period and any other live streaming that would be done, we would have an issue at the Hill School. So I received the information. Josh was able to speak to Comcast to get info on exactly what we would need to do to expand. So currently there's a 75-15 pipe at Hill School. It's $109 a month. And the max number of people that can stream at the same time is 10. So we would need the capability to do approximately 49 people if everyone was doing things online at the same time. So unfortunately, there's some build out cost because of where the Hill School is located. So it's not just a matter of increasing, it's a matter of some kind of construction. That is approximately a 30-day time frame that it would take to get that done. And the build out costs alone are $14,000. What Comcast has offered us is that if we give them half of the build out costs, they would prorate the rest, and our monthly cost would be $625 if we signed a 2-year contract. If we signed a 2-year contract, it would keep us in line with everyone else, and then we would have hopefully the ability at the end of the 2 years to negotiate a new contract and try to save money in a bulk manner. During the remote, we're not going to obviously be able to have this in place in time for remote learning. So we've made some accommodations and we're still working on it. Wendy's still working on it. So for special ed teachers that need to have remote meetings, for instance, they may go someplace else to have those meetings, either another building. We can make some accommodations for people to be at home if need be. So we're looking at alternative spaces other than being in the Hill School because we can only have 10 at a time. So Wendy's having quite an adventure of trying to figure out which teacher can stream when, and everybody's going to have a window of time when they can be doing a Google Meet or pushing out anything live stream. So that is a decision for the board regarding, what you want to do about that bandwidth, because it's not enough for all the teachers to be working at the same time.
Could I ask maybe Amber to give us, I don't know, I guess I'm not super clear on those numbers. Can you break that down and explain it like I'm a 5-year-old type of way, like how it's going to change what we pay now versus
Sure.
what the next couple of years would look like?
Yep. So the difference in the monthly cost would be $516. So you'd multiply that out by 12, and then add to it the upfront construction cost of $7,000.
Can any of that be covered under the COVID that we're receiving, the $174,000 instead of the Chromebooks, and maybe take the Chromebooks out of a different fund?
I guess it doesn't really matter where we take it from. I think we have the need to use every penny of the COVID, funding from the grant. And then we do have money in the budget for technology replacement. So we can certainly, shift things around if need be. So I think we're going to end up spending the entire grant amount plus some.
Andy, I just have a question when you're concerning about a different location for the special ed directors and the courses. Have you reached out to the town, like maybe the public library? They do have secluded rooms.
I have not. I don't know if Wendy has.
No, I have not at this point reached out to anywhere outside. My first train of thought was to see within our buildings if we had some space that maybe we could use, because these are special education meetings and I want to be very careful with privacy. I really would prefer to keep it in-house, and then see if that's unaccommodating, possibly looking at them working from home in a setting where they're on their own. We can entertain it if it's something that you would like us to look at.
Andy, I have another question. What are the costs that we're using for the internet for Three Rivers and also PA for monthly cost?
I don't have a budget in front of me to be able to look that up. We can certainly get it to you if you'd like.
Thanks.
Thanks, Patty.
So Patty, it sounds like you need action from us.
I just, I'm sensing the workload that Patty has in front of her, you know, getting higher and higher and stuff just like spilling off the top. You know, is that something that April can assist with providing, or is that something perhaps the board has already been provided?
I mean, it's in the annual budget, right? I'm seeing nods.
It is. I don't know if it's broken out by school, but I'm sure Amber can help me with that, and we'll get an answer out. Thank you.
Andy, this is Gene. Question for the build out, and I don't believe it would run into the monthly cost of the internet service, but the build out portion of that, is that something that could come from one of the expendable trusts that we are authorized to access? The 7,000, or if we want to keep the monthly cost down, the whole 14,000? Is it, I guess what I'm asking is this going to be, this build out, is this going to be in the school building where we can possibly use an expendable trust? Or is it on the lines going into the area?
I don't know the answer to that, Gene. It was just referenced as a build out cost, but I see what you're saying. I don't know if it's inside the building or things that need to be run from outside. I'm not sure.
Andy, this is Ann. I have a follow-up question. So
Sure.
if the staff is working from home, is there an additional cost for them to increase their bandwidth? Only because I'm working at home and I had to increase mine, so I have an extra additional fee for my cable, for my internet. Is that something that we're looking at, Wendy?
Nobody's spoken to me specifically about it. I think, everyone at this point, if that option is there, they've been more willing, they are willing to take that option to work from home because of our bandwidth issues. So I think it's more of a positive thing versus people being considering what their bandwidth issues are. So at this point, no one's come up to me. Doesn't mean that maybe somebody doesn't in the future.
Thank you.
If I could ask Mr. Coughlin, I see you're with us. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm wondering if I know you've worked with the renovation committee a bit or a lot. I'm wondering if this is a project that we would probably eventually do anyway. Like if we spend this money, is it something that's going to get undone if we were to renovate that building, and it would be a very temporary spend, or is it something that would probably be incorporated in that project anyway? So we're spending the same money, we're just doing it earlier.
So Sandy's raising her hand, and she's a member of that committee. So I don't really want to speak for them, but personally, this is a Josh Berube project. My 2 cents in it is I don't think you'd be doubling up with this because expansion would probably call for more technology as is. And you might be getting ahead of the curve a little bit today as opposed to tomorrow.
Sandy, did you want to add something?
I would agree with that. It's on the list of considerations in our upcoming recommendations that bandwidth and technology issues be addressed at the Hill School if there is a renovation expansion.
Thank you. Other questions?
Can I just get a little bit of clarification on what, if any, action tonight Patty is looking for the board to consider?
Yep, that was my next question.
Sure. So the board has asked that any transfer of funds that exceed $1,000 from the budget come before you for action. So that line item does not have the funds in it that we would need to make this happen. So it would have to be found elsewhere, and the board would need to grant that permission.
So Andy, this is Amy. I'll make a motion to, I'm gonna need help with the words here, but authorize the expenditure of funds to pay for construction and services to increase broadband capability at the Pembroke Hill School.
That's sufficient, Patty?
I believe it is.
This is Ann, and I second.
Thank you. Further discussion?
This is April. Just a question. Do we, would it be useful to put a dollar amount on that motion? We did hear some dollar amounts from our superintendent. So just to clarify that, to authorize an amount up to a certain dollar amount.
I'm fine with amending the motion. That thought blinked through my mind as I was making it. I'd suggest a number of 15,000, which I know is $1,000 more than what Patty said. But I also know from experience, sometimes things are more expensive than originally anticipated.
It might, I didn't do the math, it might be more than that though. If you multiply the, I don't know if anyone has a calculator handy.
Patty, I did just the half up front, the 7,000
Yeah.
plus the 625 comes to 13,192.
Okay.
For the 1 year and the build
Great.
out.
Thank you.
So this is Ann. I second the correction or additional information Amy put in her first motion.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I do have a concern, not knowing where this build out may occur, where this money is going to come from. If it is at all possible to take money out of a building or an infrastructure or a technology trust. I'm concerned about making a decision on this, not knowing where that construction, that build out will be. But I do understand that it's a 30-day lead time on it, and we don't have 30 days.
Patty, is that so? Mechanic wise, we're authorizing the expenditure of funds. I don't believe, have the authority to specify what budget line the money comes from to go into that one. Is it something that can be brought to the board at a later date to say, yes, you are able to expend from this trust fund to cover those costs, and we can approve that transfer then?
Sure. And like we talked about at an earlier meeting, I think all of us are concerned about the budget this year. And I think Amber will be helping us as time goes along to monitor closely. And if it looks like we're overexpending in some areas, you can schedule a public hearing to take funds out of the trusts. So we have several trust funds that we could look to. It wouldn't just have to be out of a trust fund for this project. You might say, like, the budget's getting really tight. We want to withdraw $50,000 out of the special ed trust, for instance, just to replenish the budget somewhat. So we can monitor that this year. And if we feel like we're getting tight, we can have that conversation and post a public hearing.
Great. That makes me feel a little better.
All right. Well, maybe you know a little bit of information, possibly Josh does. Obviously, we've had to expand broadband in TRS and PA over the years, and have we expended anything from a trust to do a build out in the past?
Not that I can remember. We've certainly, I think we've used E-rate in the past for some of the wiring that was allowed under E-rate. And we did get PA and Three Rivers in really good shape, but the hill part kept getting cut from the budget, and it wasn't as much of an issue because it was an elementary building and you didn't have a whole bunch of teachers streaming at one time. But given the situation that we're in now, that's something that's required because of the pandemic.
All right, any other questions before we take a vote? All right, so to approve the expenditure of up to $15,000 for the build out of internet infrastructure at the Hill School. On a roll call vote, April.
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Hold on, I gotta flip back in my notebook. The other topic that we had said, just a brief kind of update on reopening. There were a couple specific questions. I think it was Ann, but I can't remember for sure, regarding like the start dates and things like that.
Yes, Andy. I just had residents, at the beginning of the meeting, constructive criticism is that we change our mind at every vote, at every meeting. So I just wanted to give additional feedback to the parents that the dates that we are starting remote, the dates that we are doing hybrid. And what I've heard throughout the meeting is that we're not sure of the cohorts, the alphabet, who are going to be in section A or section B. Is that correct?
I think that's what I understand, is that those things are being finalized like right now.
Andy, can I address that to
Sure.
an extent? Thank you. So cohort A has consistently been students with the last name A to J. Cohort B has consistently been the students with the last name K to Z. That's been communicated a couple of times. What is unclear right now is, we had, for instance, the 5% of respondents that said that they need a change in cohort, and it's unclear which cohort they're going to be in yet. So that has to be individually communicated. But in terms of broad strokes, it has been communicated that it's A to K, A to J for cohort A, and K to Z for cohort B.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Are there any other, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
Is it okay if I jump in?
Absolutely.
That's for PA. And so I just want to make sure that on our end, we started with that as a basis. However, because our classes are static, and when we look at our numbers, we need to make sure they're balanced from one day to the next. So we will be making some changes to that. All students that have siblings will be placed on the same cohort, whether they're in PA, TRS, or Hill School. But then there might be some students that we move from one day to the next. They don't have a sibling, but they help even us out. So that right now is the work that we're doing. Tammy, she's been in it all day long, hours and hours, and she's sending me updates on that. So our goal is to get that out absolutely as soon as possible, so everyone knows what day specifically they are coming into the building.
Thank you.
Now, Three Rivers, if I could, we did send out an email today indicating the actual dates of when remote is and hybrid is. And the goal now is to have Thursday as the publishing date for all of our student schedules, which will have their cohort groups labeled in them.
Thank you.
Great. Well, we're on the topic. Are there any other quick general questions about the school reopening plans?
This is April. Could we have a description of what exactly does hybrid mean? Because I have some parents who are reaching out to me who their impression is on the days that their students are not in the building, that it's going to look like the blizzard bag days. So it'd be helpful to everyone understand, what does hybrid schooling look like inside the building and outside of the school building? Thank you.
Do each of our principals want to hit that one more time quickly?
Yeah, I don't mind starting. Similar to some of the other topics we've discussed, I think flexibility is a really important part of this. It is not our intent to recreate Blizzard bags. I think that we need something that has more, fits more into the scope and sequence of the curriculum than a typical Blizzard bag assignment would. But with that, the caveat is that there may have to be some flexibility where the teacher is working with the students in the classroom and then has while the student at home is working on something, and then there's time later on in class conference with that student. So I mean, we have spent decades trying to work on differentiated instruction for our students, and I think that it's really important that remote instruction features that, and that we preserve as much flexibility as possible, depending on what the intent of the lesson is, the content, and the skills of the students.
Can I just ask for a quick point of clarification? Dan, you jumped into education lingo. Can you just say what differentiated instruction means, please?
Yeah, so that's just that it's not using a one-size-all approach, and so typically differentiated instruction may mean that you have a learner that's more verbal, and that you would create assessments and instruction that is geared towards accessing those skills, and it's better for that student to demonstrate their knowledge in that way, whereas you may have other students that are more kinesthetic or visual, and they can demonstrate in that way too. So that's just my elevator speech on it, but it's really all about flexibility.
This is April again. Just again, for those of us who do not have an education degree, what will that look like in simplified terms? Is the time away from the school campus going to look like homework, for lack of another term? But I think most of us know what homework is. Just a clear definition, because that's what I'm hearing is people aren't sure what to expect. And honestly, I'm on this board and I'm not 100% sure what to expect either. So could we break it down a little simpler, please? Thank you. Just also for me, so for understanding. So thank you.
At Three Rivers, what I'm envisioning, first of all, I think it's important to emphasize we've never done this before. So we are still searching for some of those answers ourselves. But basically, when Group A is in on Tuesday, they'll have in class just like we typically have. It will be a typical schedule. They'll have in class instruction. Of course, the class size will be half. So the goal would be to get quite a lot of accomplished in that time. Now on Wednesday, when they are home, I don't like the term homework, but I do think it's independent work, where they will be assigned certain things that, depending on the class, depending on what's going on, it could be a small project. It could be a continuation of a writing prompt that they're doing. It could be, reviewing numbers and facts and things like that. Then on Wednesday, they come back and they continue with their in-class learning. So, like I said, this is a new model for us. I know a lot of times colleges and frankly high schools do block schedules where it's every other day. So we're still learning as we go, but basically I hope that helps, April, that it will be independent learning on the off day or the day that they are home, because the teachers will be teaching the other group.
Thank you. That is very helpful. Thank you very much. Would the expectation be that, I understand there's going to be differentiated learning and instruction, but would the expectation be that once a student returns to the classroom, that's when their independent work is due, or that may be old school thinking where some work can be done online? Kind of due dates, what are those going to look like for the learning that's going on in assignments outside of the classroom?
Well, I think all the assignments are going to be all tied together. So if you have and it really depends. Some teachers work. A lot of teachers work in units. I can think of a science unit that might go a number of weeks, and so they slowly build towards the skill that they're working on. So you might have we want to go old school. You have a lecture on the day that they're in, And then on the day off, they're working on parts of that lecture and preparing to come back for the next day. It might be due the next day, it may be due the next week. That would not be anything new or different that we've always done. Just because you have a class today doesn't mean you have something that is due tomorrow. Some teachers will say, you know, we're going to give a kind of a short syllabus for the whole week, where they have, this is what we're working on for the week, and by the time I see you on next Wednesday, you need to have this done. So it will be, and that's always been like that. So I don't see some of that changing.
One other follow-up question, please, regarding the independent learning off of school campus. At this, and I know this is all new, and like you said, it's the first time you're doing it, so I appreciate that. And you know, that's very helpful. Has there been any talk about possibly any sort of support or help that may come from fellow students, such that when I was in high school, the National Honor Society offered like a couple hours that they were manning a phone for like homework help. Have you heard, has any of that been discussed, or possibly something that could happen to help those students when they're not on campus? Thanks.
Yeah, it's actually a good idea. I know some families are trying to get together so that their kids aren't alone, and working together just for support. You know, we're open to a whole mess of different ideas, you know, and as we go, I think we're going to stumble and, you know, then stand and then stumble again. And we're going to continually work until we can get it right for kids. I'm actually looking at trying to find a way to maybe have some access to teachers that day that they're not in school. I don't know how we can do that. It'll be through Google Classroom. So there are some options that we'll continue to look at. And my experience has been anything new that we do, it takes us a while, and then all of a sudden things will begin to look brighter for us. And we'll say, wow, we can really do this. This is a really cool idea. We couldn't see that because we don't know what we don't know. And then we'll implement it as much as we can. We'll support kids as well as we can.
Thank you.
You know, at the high school for that, you know, we have offered as extended learning opportunities something called a faculty aid that upperclassmen primarily can take as an opportunity, and they do become essentially student tutors, mentors in class. And one of the things that I think we really do need to explore is how we can leverage that in a hybrid environment. And I think we can do that fairly easily, but it's been a popular program for our upperclassmen. Is something I think that would be effective.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. One quick question I wanted to add before we move off of agenda item 3E is I just wanted to ask Mr. Coughlin if the purchases that we approved last time had been made.
Yep. So the smaller units for what I would call the offices and one-on-one areas have been purchased and are on site. They've been inventoried and dispersed to the schools. We just haven't officially plugged them in. And the classroom units have been purchased, and the ETA is the back end of the first week of September.
Great. Thank you very much. So the last agenda item in number 3, immediate business, is letter F, the area letter on school reopening. This is mine. I do want to take responsibility here for not bringing this forward sooner. I did receive this letter from, well, I didn't really receive this letter from the other boards. I received this letter from Patty. It's addressed to the Pembroke School Board members. And again, it only came to me and it only came through Patty, so I'm not sure why it wasn't sent to all of us. For transparency's sake, I would like to take the time right now to read the whole letter. It is dated August 4th, and I do take responsibility for not bringing it forward sooner. The day that I received this, I was at a family funeral, and it was only a couple of days before our next board meeting. I did reach back out to Patty to ask kind of what direction to go with this, and it should have been on the agenda for our 8/11 meeting, and it wasn't. That's my fault, so I take responsibility for that. But I do want to read this publicly so that everybody is aware that it's out there. So August 4th, 2020, Pembroke School Board members. The Allenstown, Chichester, and Epsom board members write today in strong opposition to the most recent decision by the Pembroke School Board to open the upcoming school year with a remote learning plan for Pembroke Academy students. In the attached 1969 Pembroke Authorized Regional Area Plan, letter M of the agreement states, quote, there will be a minimum of 3 joint meetings of the participating school boards annually for the purpose of consulting and advising about any and all matters of joint interest, including improvement or changes in curriculum and other school programs and services, end quote. The agreement further states that the receiving district, parentheses, Pembroke Academy, assumes responsibility for providing facilities, curriculum, and staff for a comprehensive high school by September 1st, 1973, end quote. We disagree with your decision by choosing the remote learning plan for all PA students without the opportunity to consult and advise the 3 sending towns. This does not meet the standards set by the regional area plan. We urge the board to act and respond to our concerns and reconsider your vote for the benefit of all PA students and families. Sincerely, the Allenstown School Board, the Chichester School Board, and the Epsom School Board. I will say that by the time that I could have brought this forward, we had already considered that vote, or I'm sorry, reconsidered that vote and changed it. It does still have a remote option to start the school year, but it is not a full remote start as we first voted on. So I do hope that that reconsideration kind of allayed some of the concerns that were laid out here. I will also say that there is a full SAU board meeting scheduled for 2 nights from now, Thursday night, August 20th. That is something that is open to the public. So if there are members of the community that are interested in the goings on of the SAU board, that will be Thursday night. I think it's 6 o'clock. I can double check that. And so I hope to discuss this then. I also I would like board members to chime in and with anything that you want to say on this, whether that's chastising me for not bringing it to you sooner, or just opinions, thoughts and opinions. The one thing that I will say is, you know, I have, and I'll repeat this on Thursday, I have been concerned / surprised that the SAU board or even the SAU exec board, as far as I'm aware, and we'll do board reports in a second, as far as I know, have not met since this whole thing started. When we first got word that COVID was spreading like wildfire, we had an emergency meeting to close the schools. And since then, I, at least as chair, have not received any communication that the SAU board or the exec board has met or intended to meet up until the meeting scheduled for Thursday night. So I guess my initial reaction to this was, you know, I would love the input from the sending towns on these things, but we have to have a meeting to have those discussions. And so I'm a little bit concerned that meetings have not happened as of yet. So anyway, like I said, if there's anything any board members want to say about this, I'm certainly open to hearing it and having a discussion. I do apologize for not getting this out to the board members sooner, and I'm sure that it will be addressed on Thursday night. So with that, if there's anybody who wants to chime in, go for it.
This is Ann, and we all need to appreciate that, you know, family issues do come up. The question I have is, I am on the area agreement committee, and I'm not sure, there isn't really a chair. I don't think. I'm not sure who sets up those meetings.
For the exec, so the AREA thing, I think is a little bit different. The SAU exec board is made up of representatives from all of the boards. The SAU full board obviously is every board member in every town. The chair of the SAU exec board right now, or I guess of the SAU full board, Patty, correct me if I'm saying that wrong, is Carl Schaefer. The chairmanship of the SAU board rotates through the towns. So, for example, if it was if this year, since you're our representative to the SAU board, if it were Pembroke's turn to be the chair, then you would be the chair for this year. Does that
Correct.
make sense?
Yeah, I understand that for the executive, but I didn't know who sets up the area meetings, because the districts are saying that we haven't even addressed them. We haven't had our 3 meetings. So I'm not sure who would be setting up those meetings to begin with.
Yeah, I could be wrong, and I'm new at this chair thing myself, but as far as I'm aware, the chair of the SAU exec board is also the chair of the SAU full board and is responsible for scheduling or arranging these meetings.
Okay.
So can I share something, Andy?
Absolutely.
So a couple of years ago, the AREA, so the AREA is a committee and it has the board representatives, which each board has already chosen. That committee was meeting for a while when we were talking about a couple of years ago, some interest about opening up the agreement. So that committee was pretty active in the fall. Every year we have 3 AREA meetings set, and what Kathy has been doing is adding those in with an executive board meeting, because we had historically had an AREA committee meeting and the headmaster would show up and Peter and I would show up and maybe one board member would show up and we would give an update on what was going on at Pembroke Academy. So we started doing them back to back with the executive board meetings, thinking at least we had an audience of 5 board members, so we could do the AREA update when there were going to be people there. So there's still been not a lot of interest. People haven't been coming just to hear about the AREA. I think times have been obviously very different, and now there's a renewed interest in having conversation. We do have some AREA meetings already set up for the year, and I think they're probably on the schedule with the other SAU board meetings and the executive board meetings. So those are chosen, but I would assume on Thursday night, people will talk about having a little bit more formal meeting now that there's interest in having conversation. And that was something that Peter and I have been discussing as well.
Was that, they're upset that these meetings haven't happened, but we're not the chair of those, correct?
Correct. So the meetings have happened. We probably canceled one that was going to happen at the end of last year, but like I said, it's been more lack of interest. So the meetings have been scheduled and have been posted, but people haven't had interest in attending those.
Oh, thank you.
This is April. I just went and looked at the minutes that are posted on the SAU website, and I was on the AREA committee last year, and I am again this year. There's only information for one meeting posted, and I do remember several being canceled. So part of this, I think, also comes from we are a very young board. Kind of how do these inner workings go? We don't really have the answer. How do those meetings get set up? How do we make sure that we're in compliance and it's not just us, but it's the other AREA schools as well? Because yes, we had one meeting last year, but the agreement calls for 3. Well, what mechanism is in place to make sure that all the districts within the AREA are in compliance, not just one district? So that's a little concerning to me. But I want to say if I know that we had public comment where we heard from a couple of the Allenstown board members. I want to say thank you for reaching out for the Allenstown board, Chichester board, and Epsom for reaching out to us with their concerns. And it does seem like since this board has reconsidered how we're starting schooling, I hope that has addressed the needs in this particular letter, but I look forward to finding out more about it on Thursday night at the full SAU board meeting.
Andy, this is Amy. Can I make a couple comments?
Absolutely.
So I did send you an email during this meeting, Andy, as you requested earlier. I was really surprised. I'm a newbie on the school board, as April was alluding to. I was really surprised that it could be possible, and in fact is happening, that each of the boards would choose a different modality for school, remote start, hybrid start. And, I don't want to debate like whether that we should have the right to do that or we shouldn't have the right to do that, because I think probably people will agree that the more we're in lockstep with each other amongst the boards, the better for everybody. And so one of the things that I think is a really great opportunity is the matrix that we talked about earlier, where we help design for ourselves the guidance that will help us know, like, okay, these things happened, we have to go full remote now, or these things happened, hooray, we can go full time in school now. I think it would be fantastic if we could talk about that with all of the boards and work together instead of each of its each of the boards in the district on their own, cutting the same stuff from whole cloth that we are. You know, we're all in new territory in so many different respects. And so I was previously unavailable for the meeting on Thursday. I am now available, looking forward to attending the meeting, looking forward to meeting all those folks, and looking forward to exploring opportunities to work together.
Yep, and I would echo, we are a young board. I am a chair in only my second year. No excuses. We've got a job to do, but I certainly look forward to Thursday and hope that that's a constructive conversation. I know that there are folks on our other town boards that have been on the boards for a very long time, and I certainly respect their opinions. And I'm hoping that they can give us some advice on how to kind of manage ourselves and how to move forward. And I do hope that we can have these meetings on a regular basis and keep in touch with them. I do think it's super important that we're checking in with them from time to time. And the AREA agreement is something that's been a conversation in Pembroke for a while now, and I think it's now becoming a little bit of a conversation in the other towns. So getting on the same page with them will be great. I'll also take this moment, if I could, publicly, while there's still over 100 people on the call. I will say that, sadly, there's a municipal budget committee meeting in Pembroke on Thursday night also. I am the board's NBC representative. The scheduling has not been my friend this year, and in the two meetings that there already have been, Mr. Gauss has kindly filled in for me. I spoke with him. We are both planning to attend the SAU full board meeting on Thursday, and so I just wanted to let the townspeople that are listening know that that is not because we do not respect the NBC or want to work with them or anything of the sort. But in the times that we are facing the questions that need to be answered right now for our schools, I think it is absolutely imperative that as many people from the Pembroke School Board be at the SAU board meeting on Thursday night as possible. I have requested from Ms. Sherman to ask Ms. Wheeler to please provide as much of a thorough update on the budget situations as possible, and I will forward that on to the MBC chair so that they have as much information as we can possibly give them at this point. I just wanted to be clear that the school board will not be represented at that meeting. I will send an email tomorrow to Mr. LePage stating that as well, but I just want everybody to know it's because this SAU board meeting is extremely important and we all need to be there. So with that, I think we can move on to agenda item number 4, continuing business, and we'll start out with board reports. And I think there's nothing to say on SAU board, but next time there will be.
Yes, we are going to be meeting next month because they have to start on the budget.
Excellent. So budget committee report, I kind of just did that out of order. Like I said, we requested as much information as we can get. I know things are still fluid, but any details that we can get to provide to the town would be fantastic. PACE report, Jean, nothing to say there.
Nothing to say, Amy, do you have any comment on that? I have not followed up on that.
No, I'm setting up a meeting with Jorge, and there is a board meeting coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Fantastic. So I've got the Hill Renovation Committee on here. I'm not sure if Kevin is on the line tonight or not. Kevin Foss, if you're available and you want to unmute yourself, we'd love to hear from you.
Hear me?
I can.
Okay. We have met a number of times now over the last 6 weeks or so since you asked us to reconvene. Most recently last Thursday. We've been talking with, I spoke with town employees, the town planner, the town administrator. We've been looking at community demographics, planning projects, comparing that against student enrollment data. And we've started putting together some of the framework of our final report. I will just speak quickly about your broadband thing because I couldn't unmute in time, but Sandy kind of addressed it. Any plan that has been put together by architects so far, which include just renovating the building, or expanding the building in some way, shape, or form keeps the electrical and server room where it is. So my guess is Comcast would just be changing you from a coax connection to a fiber connection. Any renovation project would not be impacted by that. Josh has said that with the addition of air conditioning last year to that room, he would not want to relocate that server room during any project. So your money spent there should be money spent well and not impacted in the future. Our next meeting is Thursday night at Hill School, and that's at 6 p.m.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Just wanted to say to you and everybody on the committee, we appreciate all of your work. You guys have, I've been on the emails that there's meetings coming up. You guys have been doing a lot of work lately. We really appreciate it. I know I said it when we kind of kicked this thing off a long time ago, but as the board rep to your committee, I try to stay hands off because I want it to be, you know, as community created as possible, and don't want board opinions in there yet until we've gotten a recommendation. But of course, if you ever have questions for the board, if you want somebody to attend a meeting, just let me know. I'm more than willing to do it. So appreciate everything that you guys are doing.
And just lastly, one quick thing. We are meeting Thursday night, but after that, we had discussed, because most of our members are parents or teachers, and in some cases, these people are wearing both of those hats. We are going to take a couple weeks off after Thursday's meeting, just so that those people can get into whatever this new school year looks like, and then we'll reconvene again towards the middle of September.
Makes perfect sense to me. Thanks again. So principals reports, we've heard from you guys.
This is April. One thing that wasn't on here, and we just kind of went over it, was the AREA committee. I'm on that committee, and I just checked the SAU schedule. The next time that committee is scheduled to meet is November 10th. So I just wanted to add that as far as board reports. Thank you.
Thank you. I wrote that in my notes, April, but if you happen to think of it sometime after the meeting, if you shoot me an email, I will send it. I'll forward it to Kathy to make sure she includes that. Because just looking over the agendas, I'm not going to remember if I don't have a reminder. Thank you very much. So principals, I guess we'll start top down this time. So Mr. Morris.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, school counselors are now in full-time. They returned on Monday, and they've been hard at work fixing some schedules and working around some of the, as we've all been talking about, the confounds that are created by trying to open a school in our current context. To that end, Julie Quinnell, our tech integrator, as well as our tech department, have worked hard throughout the summer preparing devices and getting the systems in place that will support remote and hybrid and in-person learning to some extent. And they have been facilitating Chromebook pickup this week as well as last. So, you know, we're hoping that all of our students will have their devices for August 31st. Julie Quinnell also put out a survey assessing connectivity for families, and we've received feedback on that and can act accordingly with the families that have identified a need. And lastly, just, you know, now that we have some resolutions regarding our scheduling, communication is going to start coming out here pretty fast starting tomorrow.
Thank you. Are there questions for Dr. Morris? Great. We usually don't let him off the hook that easy, but we'll move on to Mr. Marston.
Yeah, not unlike PA, we're moving forward with Chromebook, getting Chromebooks to all the kids. The one thing that I think is important for folks to know is that while we've ordered some of these Chromebooks, they're not in yet. So we are having to go through all of our Chromebooks, and the tech department has done a great job of making sure that they revamp some of the ones that we're trying to replace. But currently, we're pretty confident we'll be able to get a Chromebook to every kid that they need, that need ones. We also put out a survey. We are following up a survey we did. I can't remember when we did it. I think it was in June, about connectivity. And at the time, it was almost 99% that have reliable connectivity. And so far, I have not heard of anyone that needs support with connectivity that needs a Chromebook also. So we're moving forward with that. Like I said earlier, our schedule will hopefully go live on Thursday. We also are in the beginning phases of trying to pull off a Panther Prep Day for our 5th graders. It will be virtual, probably looking like next Wednesday morning. We'll put together a mock schedule and teachers will be live to talk to those kids in class so that we can get support to some of the 5th graders that are coming into our building. Again, it's the first time we've tried it, so it'll be a little bit interesting. We're also, on our Flex Day, we're going to be having myself, administrative team, myself, and Katie Gagney will have our special ed team leader, Andrea Brannick. We'll have our technology person, Kelly Antinarella, and our school nurse, and we'll meet virtually Mondays. We're still picking a time, but every Monday. So we'll have a live meeting for parents that want to chime in and ask questions and get updates. So we're moving forward, and frankly, it's exciting to be finally working on getting the school open because that gives us some focus, and we're looking forward to whatever's coming our way.
Thank you. Questions for John?
Andy, this is Ann. I apologize. I wasn't able to unmute in time, but I did have a question. It might have been addressed prior, but what does it look like when they're addressing that connectivity for the students if they're not able to have reliable connectivity? How is that something that we're assisting?
So Josh Berube has worked with our tech integrators and our tech department to secure hotspots, wireless hotspots. That's something that we've been able to try to do through the CARES money as well. And so that will allow for, and they've actually gone out and done some field testing throughout our communities to make sure that these things work in the outer reaches of Chichester and everywhere else. So they've really put some time into that, and the whole premise behind it is just that we can provide them with some connectivity when we're asking them to tune in remotely.
Thank you very much for explaining that, because hotspots usually work sometimes better than my actual internet. So thank you for explaining that.
You're welcome.
Others? All right, we'll move to PHA.
Okay, so we have been working on, like Patty was saying, since we're having our connectivity or what we our bandwidth issues, we're really trying to look at those first 2 weeks in a more creative way. So we're working on some plans to do things in a flipped classroom model, and that would mean teachers possibly making some videos, pushing out, and then working in through a Google Meet to kind of go over that those activities that they're doing. So those first 2 weeks, we do expect that they would not be on for the amount of time that if we were to be, in a full remote model or for our full remote students, because we have to kind of work up to that at this point. We will have interesting schedules to create as far as who's allowed to open up a Google Meet at a certain time. So I'm excited to get the staff in to hear what their thoughts are on creating this 2 weeks as a back in the building introduction, very interactive, fun way of kind of jumping off the school year. We've had staff, coming in and setting up the classroom. Signage is going out through the building. And the other thing we're working on is, especially for our kindergarten, usually we do an all aboard where the kids would come in on an appointment basis and we would do a kindergarten assessments. So we're looking to do that the first 2 weeks to continue so that we have those kindergarten assessments. So it would be a one-on-one appointment basis for about 30 minutes. The kiddos would come in. We really want them to see their teachers' faces, hear their voices, start to feel a little bit comfortable because, when kinders walk in, sometimes we have tears and we want to see what we can do to kind of help ease them into this situation. So we're looking at doing that over the course of the 2 weeks, that appointment basis, having them come in to do those assessments. Same thing with our tech department. They have been rock stars, really kind of working on going through these hundreds of Chromebooks. We did order touchscreens for our K1. Those are not in yet. So anyone that does take one out, we would have to do a swap later on, but we will issue one at this point to make sure that if they need a device for those first couple of weeks, they have one. And then once we get our shipment, facilitating the switch out. And then we're going to be working next week on videos from teachers, classroom tours. We've, got the staff's got some great ideas, so I can't wait to have them jump in to help with that. And then one last thing, I didn't really get a chance to talk about what hybrid looks like in our building. So if I just have a moment to kind of touch base on that. For us, it differentiated instruction in elementary classroom usually takes on a small group setting. So a teacher would pull a small group to a table, and then students would be working in centers, a variety of workshop activities, read to self, doing a writing activity, something like that. So what we're going to do is really look at that time that the kids are in the building, is that where they're in front of a teacher as much as possible, and those activities that they would typically work on while the teacher's doing a small group, that we would try to get them to do some of that work at home. So if it was a writing piece that they were working on, they don't necessarily need to be in front of a teacher to do that. They need that writing time so they could do that at home. And then they would conference when they come back to the teacher. So we're really looking at making sure that the time they're using at home is to really work off of what that direct instruction was. And we've also getting a subscription to something like Zern, which does mirror perfectly what we're doing in math. And it does have direct instruction and follow-up practice, and we can track all the data and where the kids are. So we're really looking at how to make sure that that time at home is very useful and not that homework feel. We don't want that.
Awesome. Thank you. Questions? Okay. Thank you to the administration. And we will move on to agenda item number 5, policy review. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 listed that we started to look at last time. Any discussion around any of these policies?
Andy, this is April. Can we take these one by one, please?
Certainly. I'll write down the list. Anybody have questions, concerns, ready to move on ACAC, which is Title IX sexual harassment?
Andy, can I jump in? Do you mind?
Absolutely not.
So the ACAC policy, I would say, I think it's probably a good idea to move all of these if the board's amenable to a third reading, because we have a couple of edits that we need to make on ACAC that aren't ready. And I think that I didn't receive any suggestions for language, and I know everybody's incredibly overwhelmed, and we haven't had time as a leadership team either to go through these and look closely to see what changes we may recommend to the board. So not trying to stop you from taking any action, but just kind of wanted to preempt everything by giving you that information.
Thank you.
Andy, this is Amy. The only thing I was going to say in discussion is a lot of what Patty just said, which is, I apologize, but I have not had the chance to go through these the way that I would like to have the opportunity to do. So I'll be prepared with more discussion at a third reading.
Others?
This is Anne. I have a question. The suggestions I sent concerning the mask policy, that some of the wording that matches our dress code be added.
I'm sorry, Ann, did you say you did send an email?
Yes.
Was it to me or was it to Patty? I don't remember seeing that one.
To you. I can resend
okay.
it.
Okay, I'll double check. You can resend it if you want, but I'll look for it. I apologize if I missed that.
Andy, again on the mask policy, I've gone through it a couple of times now. Everything looks pretty good on it except one. Under general requirements, third bullet from the bottom, the district shall endeavor to maintain a supply of masks for students and staff who do have access to a mask or cloth face covering. I think it should be to who do not have access to a mask or face cloth. Okay, that's a tongue twister on me right there. But
I hear you. You want to send me an email with the page number, or the rough location?
Yep, absolutely. I'll do that.
Andy, this is April. Since we've had 2 board members jump to the mask policy, I think it's important to bring this up in a public forum. But on the last page of that mask policy, it addresses any student who refuses to wear a mask or who wears a mask in an improper fashion and refuses to wear it safely shall be deemed a health hazard to themselves and others and shall be removed from the school building, and their parent guardian shall be contacted and required to take their child unless and until such time that they are willing to comply with the face mask or cloth covering requirement. There's a RSA cited here. It's 200:39. That talks about how we can legally exclude children from education. I am absolutely not comfortable with us excluding children from an education, especially when we've put forth that we are offering a remote option. And instead of having an exclusionary clause there, I would really like to see that the student will be provided a remote instruction in lieu of no instruction. So that was really my big thing that I saw on the mask policy that was important.
Thank you. It sounds like the general feeling is we're going to need a 3rd reading on all 5 of these. Is that fair?
Yes, Andy, this is Ann, and I apologize. I tried to go out to the SAU 53 webpage to find the policies. Is there a shortcut that we can get these? Because now I have to go back to look at what meeting that we started even talking about these policies.
And they're all in your drive. There's a policy folder within your meeting.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see, but yeah, if you click on the 8/18/20 for the meeting, it's got all of the other documents in there. In kind of a like it looks different depending on how your window is, but there is a folder in amongst all those other documents that says policy, and Kathy's really good about putting them all in there.
Excellent. Thank you very much to both of you. I just found it. Thank you.
Great, you're welcome.
This is April. So if we could talk about EEAA, video and audio surveillance on school property. I compared this policy to the policy recommended by the New Hampshire School Board Association. There is a paragraph in here that it is not in the New Hampshire School Board Association recommended policy. Also, the School Board Association's policy includes bolded subtitles that I think makes this policy easier to read. So I think it would be very helpful if we had the opportunity to review the New Hampshire School Board policy. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other discussion on policy items? I don't think we need a motion to table those. We're gonna let them go to a 3rd reading and address again at our next meeting. So we'll move to agenda item number 6, informational items. I don't know, Patty, do you have anything for informational?
I do not.
Okay, I wanted to bring up quick, Ann mentioned it earlier, and I'm sure that it's just on our calendar the way it was, but is there a reason that our next meeting is the 8th instead of the 1st? Was there a holiday there or something?
Not that I can recall. I did notice that I think there are 5 Tuesdays in September, but I'm glad you brought that up. I meant to bring it up too at the end. Given the circumstances and what we're dealing with right now, I think it would be great if we could meet in 2 weeks, if the board is open to changing that to the 1st.
Yeah, I would prefer to move it to the 1st. I would prefer, and everybody can weigh in, at least for now, just moving the one from the 8th to the 1st instead of adding an extra meeting. We could always add one back if we needed to, but it might be my preference to move a meeting rather than add a meeting. But I'm not going to make a motion. I'll leave that for somebody else.
Andy, this is Ann, and I would appreciate moving from the 8th to the 1st. We do have elections on the 8th, and that's a primary, so I'm going to be there until probably 1 in the morning. But I know we have a lot of residents that have until 7 p.m. to actually vote. So I didn't want to run into parents trying to hurry home to get to our meeting. So I appreciate it moving to the 1st.
Sure. Patty, do we need to take an official vote to change the schedule? Probably.
If by consensus, if nobody speaks up against it, we can just change it.
Yeah, let's change it.
Okay. April, are you okay with changing from the 8th to the 1st?
Yes, I support that. Thank you.
Dean?
Yep, I'm good.
Cool. All right. So then, as an amendment to the agenda, I guess the agenda says that our next scheduled meeting is September 8th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. That will be September 1st, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. And that will be, unless something changes, that will be a remote meeting.
I was just going to ask if we could schedule it as an in-person meeting, and if something changes, move it to a remote meeting.
I'm not comfortable with that yet, only because I think there's a ton of people that are still interested in what we're doing. It's almost 10 o'clock, and we've been done talking about sports for an hour and a half, and we still have 82 people in the meeting. I don't believe that we have a space. I mean, this at least records. We don't have recording available in the auditorium. The auditorium is the only space that I can think of that is big enough to handle 60 or 70 of the public joining us. I don't know that they would if it were in person, but I certainly don't want to exclude everybody. So, I mean, if the board wants to vote on that, I certainly don't want to play dictator here, but currently I think it's my call, and I'm inclined to stay remote for the foreseeable future, as long as we are still seeing participation numbers as high as they are.
Fair enough.
I heard Ann and Amy, I think.
Go ahead, Ann, or I think it might have been April.
April?
It's just April. I was just going to say, one thing consistently for years that this board has heard is transparency. And I think that, there is a sincere effort to be transparent and make this meeting as accessible as we can to people. So I would support, as long as we can do the remote meetings, that we continue to do so. Thank you.
Actually, April, that brings up a good point. Maybe I need to ask Patty. Patty, there was a conversation at one point that the licensing for WebEx was going to become an issue sometime in the month of August. Is there an update on that?
Unsure if we would be able to get just a few subscriptions, and Josh was able to get us 5 so that we can continue using them for the board meetings, because that was really important.
Great. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Any other comments on the mode of board meetings?
I echo what April and Andy said, so I'm not going to repeat that, but I just also wanted to say, for my own personal choice, I do not feel that I am still striving to minimize my contact, and so I would want to have the option to participate remotely.
And I will say, I think I don't want to minimize it, but it is kind of low on the priority list with everything else we have to take up. But it is my intention, if possible, to provide remote access in some fashion to these meetings when we do get back to in-person meetings. It's something that we've heard from other people at almost every meeting we've had lately. I think it's reasonable in 2020 to do so. I'm not the one that organizes that or says whether or not we have that technology, but that it is my intention to coordinate that if possible when we do go back in person. So with that, I think we are on to our second public comment section of the evening, agenda item number 7. Again, we'll try to aim for 15 minutes with a little flexibility for the technology that we have available. As a reminder, if you're on your computer, please raise your hand. Mr. Motika will recognize you when it's your turn. When we're going to try to aim for 12, 14 minutes on that, and then, or until we run out of hands, and then we will open phone lines a few at a time. So, Mr. Motika, if you have hands ready, go ahead.
All right, we will give the floor to Dina.
Hi, this is Deanna Dumont. I'm on Donna Drive. And I just want to comment on the reading that April mentioned on the mask policy, calling a child a health hazard because, say, an elementary child, 1st, 2nd grade, is not going to be able to wear their mask properly, might have to be sent home. I think that's a bit extreme. And if my child passes out again wearing a mask and we find out that that's the reason why, she's going to be forced to have to be home doing school remote. And I don't think that's fair. And I think it's a very extreme wording, and something needs to be adjusted in that. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Tiana.
All right, next, Melanie Camello on the floor.
Mute myself. Oh, there we go. I just had a quick comment on the red, orange guidance that was talked about earlier in the meeting. And just an opinion that I don't think that it's unrealistic that administration had Hillsborough County listed as well as Merrimack County. Manchester, Nashua, they're like our biggest workforce area. A lot of people settle in Pembroke because they work in Manchester or work in Concord. So I don't feel like it's hugely unrealistic. We also have people that live in Pembroke that teach in Manchester. And we also have public charter schools here in Pembroke, which is open to all of the state. And we also have CRTC, which our students at PA attend, which is also other districts. So I don't actually think it's unrealistic that we're thinking about Hillsborough County and Merrimack County. And I do like what Amy said, that maybe there should be some type of metric or some kind of formula with our surrounding towns when we figure out 1 per 100,000. I thought that was a really great idea. And I think that people worked really hard on that. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, that's all we have with hands raised. If we want to go through, Andy, we can do the telephone calls.
Yep, let's do the phones, and then if we still have a couple of minutes after, we can check for hands one more time. So if you're on a computer and you think of something that you want to say, throw your hand up. And after the phones, we'll check in again there. I can't promise we'll get to all of them, but we'll do our best. If you want to hit the first 3 or 4 phone lines.
Good.
All right, so there's a few phone lines open. If you're on any phone and you want to speak, go ahead and state your name and I'll recognize you. Okay, let's go to the other half. All right, the rest of the phones are unmuted now. So if you've got something that you want to contribute, just state your name. All right, hearing none. Do we have any last hands, Chris?
We do not have any additional hands.
Okay, then I will close the public comments section. I do want to thank Chris Motika very much and Josh Berube from a couple meetings ago. Having another person act as our host has been extremely helpful in the organization of these meetings and especially these public comment times. So thanks very much, Chris, and any of you that talked to Josh, let him know I appreciate him filling in too. So with that, we do not have a need for non-public session tonight, so we'll move on to agenda item number 9, which I also think is none. Is that right, Patty? All right. Then, if there is nothing else, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
This is Amy. I'll move to adjourn.
This is April, second.
Sandy, that was Jean or April for the second. You pick whatever you want. All right, so adjournment on a roll call vote at 9:47 p.m. Ann?
Yes.
April?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful night.
Don't forget to stay.